the pack is the thing that's the easiest to regret if you make like it's on your body for 12 or 14 hours a day. Like $50 to $100 extra in this category specifically could go a long ways.
Welcome to Backpacker Radio, presented by The Trek, brought to you by Topo Athletic. I am your co-host. Sitting to my right is...
You're not going to say your name?
Oh, Zach Badger Davis.
You said I am your co-host.
I know, we're recording.
Right.
Yeah, we're doing it a little bit earlier today, so my brain's not... Let me drink my coffee. I'm your co-host, Zach Badger Davis. Sitting to you, my right is...
I am Juliana Chauncey, a.k.a. Chauncey.
Yikes. Okay, before we get to today's panel, we got a few reminders for you. First and foremost is if you want these episodes advertisement-free and or to support your favorite Cinnamon Connection podcasters, head on over to patreon.com/backpackerradio where you can get in on the goods for as little as $5 per month.
Mm-hmm. That, in the month of March, is $1 an episode because we got 5 Mondays in this month.
That's right.
So... this is discount month.
Welcome to Monday 4.
Yeah.
You got one more to go before we're out.
One more
April.
Monday.
Yeah, one more.
It's because it's my birthday month. They really wanted me to get the most.
That is true.
Out of it.
And we are balls deep into Thru-Hiker kickoff season.
Yeah, I've just flown home for my first flight of the year yesterday.
How'd it go?
I handled it like a champ. Nothing has scared me about it with any of all the flight stuff in the news, and I did perfectly.
It has been a bad stretch, seemingly. And I've seen the statistic that actually there have been fewer crashes up until the recording of this episode.
Yeah.
From 25 to 24. But it doesn't feel that way.
I think there was one in Arizona yesterday. So
yeah.
In real time, not yesterday, like March 23rd, but yesterday as in the day in February that we're actually recording this.
Were the crashes in 2024 just not captured in video? Is that the difference? What's happening?
I don't know. I saw one post because my newsfeed is only showing me this because they were like, hey, we know who really doesn't want to see this. Let's pump it at her.
Yeah.
I saw one post today in the parking lot actually that said that compared to last year's numbers, we're actually at less.
That's what I was just saying.
So I'm agreeing, but I don't know if that makes me feel better.
Yeah, it's basically saying, like, you think it's bad now, it sucks so much worse last year.
Yeah, and, like, there's room to go up, too.
Oh, sure.
I think statistically, flying is still the safest form of long-distance travel.
Yeah, but also the scariest way to die.
But you know what? I don't know if I trust statistics. I know that they should be reliable. However, I think that flying is statistically safer than driving because most people spend way more time in a car than on a plane. If you're taking
the numbers are run like per million miles traveled.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, so they're controlled for distance, although flying tends to be longer distance.
Okay, you're good to have around.
Do they control for time spent traveling?
That's
I
what
don't
I'm saying.
think so.
No, I feel like that is the one that would make me feel better.
They're a little analogous. I mean, a plane flies a lot faster than you can drive a car on a highway, but yeah. I mean, still like the distance, I guess. But there's also like that statistic, right, that like 80% of car crashes happen within 5 miles of your house because that's where you spend the most time. So I guess it's kind of like that start-end thing with flying is a lot more spaced out.
Yeah.
And I can say that is based on my own knowledge true because every car crash I've ever been in, asterisks, I've never been the driver, has been within 5 miles of my home or the person's home.
Yeah.
People
to Alex's point,
around there.
The majority of driving also happens close to your house.
Yeah.
Every trip that you take is 100% of those trips are close to your house. Whereas the percentage that...
okay,
yeah, I mean, my town is like less than 5 miles across, so unless I'm going somewhere, I'm pretty much only driving in town. Although I walk to work now, so that's awesome.
Hey.
Did we change our Triple Crown?
No.
It wasn't the one in the text?
That was the question of the day.
No. Okay. We can continue. This is bad radio. I prepared for a different Triple Crown.
Okay.
I prepared for...
We'll get there. I'll do this part while you figure it out. If you live in the Austin, Texas area, we would love for you guys to join us at our live podcast, which is just a few weeks away, April 17th. It's going down at Soundspace at Captain Quack's, 6 p.m., 5:30 doors. We've got a super surprise, secret, special, alliterative guest.
Yeah, and I figured out my next hint,
which
is good because I was running low on them briefly, but not anymore. My hint for this time is this person is Italian.
Does he eat the master
And they speak exactly like that. I'm saying that because we said, and never mind, we'll use that next time.
Okay.
Italian.
Pasta
and meatballs.
Yeah.
From Italy or Italian by blood?
See, that's not a hint.
Okay.
That's an answer.
Okay.
Can't tell you that.
Well, something for the viewers.
Just
to
think about our
about.
budget and think if we could fly someone in from Italy. The answer's probably no.
Definitely Italian by last name. There's a
Yeah.
good hint for you. Next one is, if you're taking on a long distance trek this year and you want to be part of an awesome backcountry team, hit the link in the show notes to apply to be a trek blogger. We've got a ton of awesome perks this year, headed up by Jess Stone, our newest hire. You got the opportunity for Instagram takeovers to our massive audience. We're going to send mail drops to our standout bloggers. We've got a mentorship program. And at the end of this year, we're going to fly out one standout blogger and a +1, I think.
Yeah.
Have I said that before?
You have not said +1. You've never said +1.
Yeah, let me crunch the numbers on that one. At least you. It's going to be at least you. Out to join us here in Golden, Colorado for an episode of Backpacker Radio. So to be a guest, I should clarify. So yeah, if you're taking on a long distance trek this year, head to the link in the show notes to apply to be a blogger. And last but not least, if you want the best place to get all of the Trek's top content, including Backpacker Radio posts, new job openings, and important announcements, like when we announced the Badger sponsorship, head to the link in the show notes to join the Trek's newsletter. It's the best place to go to get everything important to the Trek. And I feel like newsletters are oft forgotten about, but they're awesome. Do you have anything you want to add?
It's going to be a great time. I've never been to Austin before, but I've heard really good things about it. And we've never done a trip to the middle part of the country, which I would consider Texas in.
You mean middle in terms of
left, right?
longitude?
Left, right, middle. Yeah. So this is the middle if we're looking at vertical slices. And we've never been out to the middle to do a trip, unless you count Colorado as the middle.
Wisconsin?
Okay, fine. We did Wisconsin. This is the South Middle. We've never been to the South Middle. So, hey, you know what? If you lived in Texas or Oklahoma or Louisiana, any of those areas, and you thought Wisconsin's a bit far of a drive despite also being in the middle, now we're in the middle on your side. So the maths.
I've conversed with our guest, and he's cited that the food is one of the reasons that he's most excited to do this. What is the food that you're most looking forward to?
Two things. That's another hint. We've never said our guest is a he.
Yeah, I was about to say, did we
I think
know
we
that
have
this?
Did we?
Many times.
That's what I just caught myself on. Okay, cool. I caught myself on it.
You said previously that Garrett was not the guest.
Well, that doesn't specify.
Well, I think that was part of the guest, was that it was a guy.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay, yeah. Austin. Is Texas known for food?
Austin's
What
actually a
kind of
pretty
food?
good food town. Not that that's my thing, but
What kind of food's it known for?
Barbecue.
Fuck yeah.
I actually
You didn't
did
know
have some
that?
really
I'm
good
excited for
barbecue
that. I
once.
love barbecue.
Yeah. The barbecue capitals of the U.S., to my understanding, Texas, like the Kansas City area, and then like you got the whole South, Memphis, South in general sort of scene.
You know I'm a cornbread slut.
Well, if you like brisket, this is the
Yeah.
capital of Brisketville.
I like saucy meat.
There you go.
I like taking a barbecue sauce, especially when there's more than one flavor, and just soaking what's on the plate in it. And then having some cornbread too to absorb.
You are a saucy gal. That is not the subject of today's episode. The
No.
subject of today's episode is how to make backpacking happen on a budget. We're joined by our guy, previous guest of the podcast, senior writer at the Trek, one of our go-to gear testers, just an all-around very smart dude, Alex GPS Brown, who's an experienced backpacker and certified gear nerd. Alex has hiked the CDT Long Trail, Fifth Nerve Traverse, Wind River High Route, Haute Route Pyrenees, the Tour de Mont Blanc, Walker's Haute Route, and the Uinta Highline Trail, just to name a few. GPS, thank you so much for joining us here on Backpacker Radio again.
I'm back, baby.
So since you've last been on the podcast, it was the Uinta Highline Trail. That's the main event.
I don't know if I had done the Wind River High Route yet, and then the 3 Europe trails, and then the Uinta Highline Trail. So it's been a good 1,500 miles or so.
Yeah. All right. I don't want to get too in the weeds on that stuff because I want to stay true to the subject of today's show. But pick one of the trails that you enjoyed the most, and let's do a quick dive into that.
I'm just gonna go with the longest one, the Haute Route Pyrenees, because the length matters. It was awesome.
Yeah. So I know Kelly had done that. Did you do it before or after Kelly?
I did it after her.
Okay.
I think she did it 23. I did it last year in 24.
Got it. Right. Did you guys share notes?
I had sent her an email because I had been thinking about a PCT. I kind of wanted to gauge the environment and snow and stuff from someone who had been there before I made that switch.
Yeah. Why the draw abroad versus doing something locally?
So my girlfriend Karen is a school teacher, and she has, June and a little bit of July free. And I was like, what is the longest thing that we can complete in about 5 to 6 weeks? And I'd planned for the HRP to be my first long distance hiking guide and like trail in 2019 or something, and just couldn't make it work with COVID, or I guess 2020. So it was like I got to come back to something I'd been planning to do for a long time. Karen got to do her first long distance hike and finish it, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Just give us the quick and dirty. How long is it?
It's about 500 miles.
500, and it's difficult, yeah?
Yeah, it's they say it's like a certain percentage off trail. I didn't actually find that to be the case, but maybe that's just because it was all under snow. But average steepness is 650 feet per mile, which is steeper than the AT or the PCT.
It's like 11%, something like that.
How did the percents work? Because you were talking about that the other day, and I see that on roads when they talk about like truckers switching gears. I have no idea how the percents make sense.
Just a quick math, so if it's 650, it's 650 feet per mile, 520. So just do the ratio.
No, break it. That doesn't clarify a thing.
So
if you set your treadmill to a certain percent, it's the exact same thing.
Well, I think the ground is here. That's 0. And like 90 degrees is there. So 11% would only be like that. And that seems very not steep.
Yeah, it doesn't translate well in your head. But actually 45 degrees is 100% grade. And 90 degree angle is an infinity percent grade.
So this is actually 45, not 90.
This is 100%. This is infinity percent.
Because you're not gaining any horizontal feet, just vertical feet.
If you think like a triangle, it's like 5280 feet per mile. If it's like 1,000 feet per mile, that's 1,000 divided by 5280. So that's going to be about 20%.
Nope.
I got in a big argument about this at school once because I was doing a like civil grading homework assignment. And I was just like, I don't get why 90 degrees isn't 100% and 45 degrees isn't. It just didn't make sense to me. And then I was like, oh, percent is like same unit over same unit. But I got in like a fight with someone about it, and I realized later how stupid I was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's my problem is I see these percent grades, and I'm like, 11% isn't steep. That's barely off the ground.
Yeah, that's why I like feet per mile, because it's like it's very tangible. It's like I'm going to go 1 mile and I'm going to gain 1,000 feet in that mile. I have a better gauge of how hard that is because I have that 1,000 feet of gain component in the name.
Our realization, I can't remember if we realized it on the PCT or AT, but it was that anything below 300 you don't really feel. Anything above 300 you start to notice. So if I would check. Like I would start my far out at the base of the climb and end it at the top of the climb. And if the overall grade was like 250, not a big climb. But if it was 500, I'm probably going to like, be wheezing a little bit maybe.
Doesn't the distance matter a lot?
Yeah. But if it's 700 and it's, 0.5, I'm still going to be hating that 0.5. But if it's 250 for a mile, I'm probably going to get like 0.8 in before I think about it.
Yeah.
And then I'm almost done.
But if it's 250 over like 1/10 of a mile or 1/4 of a mile, that's a hill that you'll notice.
Yeah, but it's over before, like by the time you notice it, it's over. Like you go a 80% of a 1/10 of a mile and you start to notice it and it's like, oh, I've got 5 more steps.
Okay.
You don't need to factor in a break.
We're tangenting on a Saturday. Here we go. Sweet. Okay. Let's talk about saving money, backpacking stuff. So let's offer some disclaimers here. We were chatting before we hit the record button. Neither of us are necessarily budget backpackers. I'm in a weird position here where I get almost all of my stuff for free. And given that, I don't ever opt for something that is not very good. Occasionally I'll test stuff that I don't love, but that's rare. And then Alex is in the exact same position. He's probably tested a lot more gear over the last couple of years than I have. So this isn't stuff that we have used in practice, but GPS is one of the most researched backpackers I've ever met. And like I said, one of our senior gear people. So he's very smart on the subject. And I don't think you necessarily have to have used all these items to be able to speak on the fact that they cost X or Y.
Yeah. And like I definitely get a lot of people who ask me for recommendations because they know that I write for a backpacking website and have done a lot. And I'm like, here's what I think you should get. And then they're like, that's expensive. And I'm like, okay, here's your 80% as good, half the price option that I think you'll be happy with the amount of backpacking I actually do.
Yeah. And to that point, you've prepared a couple of lighter pack gear lists here. One is like, you consider what? I'll let you introduce it.
Yeah. I made 2 lighter packs. That's like everything that you would need to bring is basically like a copy of mine, but replacing the names of things with things that are cheaper. And one is like what I think is probably the right move for someone on a budget. I think I called it low mid in my email to you, but it's like budget oriented, but you're not scraping the bottom of the barrel in a way you're going to regret. And then I sent you one that is kind of more scraping the bottom of the barrel in a non-reckless way.
Yeah.
And then for like the big items, I have some alternate in my own little list here, but try to be comprehensive on like those 2 and a little more expansive on, tents and backpacks and that type of stuff.
Yeah. Sweet. I think that's a good primer. I want to highlight some stats that I pulled from the 2024 AT Hiker Survey. So this is just for money spent on gear, not the overall through hike. But according to the 2024 AT Hiker Survey, hikers spent on average $2,121, and over 70% of hikers spent between $1,000 and $3,000. So that's kind of the general range that people are looking at for gear. It's funny looking at that bar chart. There was people who spent $300, and then some people who spent over $13,000.
Yeah.
I think that's almost harder than trying to go budget. Like I
don't think I could do that if I tried with stuff I would actually want to be carrying.
Totally.
It seems like just like unnecessary stuff, or you get a new 10 every 3 weeks.
What was that number only on gear carried, or was that also on like town stops?
No, this is just the gear.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's possible that somebody misinterpreted the question or something.
Yeah.
But $13,000 seems like I don't know how I could possibly spend that much money.
And I would have to guess that the $300 is probably someone who had stuff beforehand, which, a fair number of people are going to have something that they can reuse.
Yeah. And then there's, gear sponsorships and various other things. So there's a lot to take into account here, which is why we should just look at the median and the mode for this stuff. So, yeah, somewhere in the $2,000 range was the most common for the AT. I didn't actually look at Max PCT survey, but I'm guessing it's probably in a similar range. Probably PCT is probably a little bit more with Bearcan, whatever traction you might need.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
ice axe.
Yeah, but okay. So you got a rough idea of where people typically land in this. Did you tally the total costs for your suggested?
Yeah, is yours showing the prices? I don't know if that's something you have to turn on, but I input prices on those lists.
I see them by category. I don't know if I do see the totals. Okay.
I think one was 800 to 900, one was like 12 to 13.
Yeah, so your mid list was $1,350-ish, and then the low end one was just under $1,000.
Yeah.
So just to give you some perspective, obviously about half the cost of what other people are spending.
And this is assuming you literally own nothing. You don't have a pair of shorts that you could reuse. You don't have shoes. You don't have anything.
Yeah.
Which hopefully if you're committing to doing a 6-month trail, you have enough previous experience to have some of that stuff going into it, and maybe you're doing some upgrades here and there.
Yeah. Any other primers that we should offer? The one I want to offer here is we're obviously talking about buying new gear. Like one of the best ways to save money is to get gear secondhand.
Totally. The only thing I put in that you is assuming you're getting used is a sleeping bag in the low budget one, because there are tons of them, and they're easy to find, and you save a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, there's a good thing to come of the fact that a lot of people don't follow through with their through hikes is like slightly used gear that they're not going to use again. And obviously that's much better for the environment as well. So in any place that you can buy something secondhand, not only is it a good thing to do budget-wise, but obviously better for Mother Gaia too. It's also worth stating that I think that there's better ways to save money than on gear. Like there's things you can do in terms of like spending less time in town. The best thing you can do in terms of saving money on gear is to make sure that you're only buying stuff once.
Yeah.
So getting the thing right the first time, as opposed to, buying a tent that you realize you don't know how to set up or that you hate, or footwear that doesn't work for you and then having to buy it again. So the best thing you can do is getting the gear purchase right on the first go round. You guys have any other primers you want to add to budget backpacking gear?
Oh, you can go.
Oh no, go ahead. I'll go after.
I was also going to say, like, the cheapest way to save money is to not buy it in the first place, which is why both of these pack lists are about 10-pound base weights. And it's like, yeah, I'm not listing extra sleeping clothes and extra whatever, like things that I don't use and I don't think anyone does really need, because it's cheaper to just not have it in the first place. Yeah. Similar with, like, it weighs 0 ounces if you don't bring it.
Right.
So those kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah. And that, I think that's a really important point to bring up that I had kind of glossed over, is we're still trying to stay somewhere in the ultra light realm with this stuff, because you could probably buy a lot of this gear from like Dick's or Bass Pro Shop or that sort of thing, and find some really cheap tents, but maybe not stuff that you'd be happy with for a long distance through hike. So with that said, should we jump right in? Chauncey, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Part of what confuses my brain is the thought of, and I guess this is important to talk to in terms of what kind of person is listening to this episode, but part of what starts to get me going in a loop is the idea of buying a good piece of gear that is budget friendly, that might not have as much longevity as something that's more expensive, being maybe a good option for someone who just wants to do one hike, like this is my one summer free. But then the part that gets me starting to spin in circles is, what if I'm someone that wants to hike multiple years and I want to do the Triple Crown, or I want to do all these other hikes and I know it's not just going to be a one and done? Is budget backpacking then technically going for the more expensive gear in the beginning because it'll last you multiple trails? And if you go for the cheaper stuff in the beginning, while you might last you one trail, you're going to be rebuying for the next trails and then ultimately spending more. That's where I start to get myself in like a little loop.
Yeah, totally. I think there is like a curve there where it's like the $700 tent actually lasts half as long as the $300 tent because it's made out of DCF instead of sil poly. So you're going to get like 150 instead of 300 nights on it. So but there is definitely like a happy medium where it's like you're spending up so that it's made well out of durable materials that are still light enough, but it's not so ultra light that it's becoming more fragile and it's using like really esoteric technologies.
Got it. Okay.
But yeah, definitely kept that in mind too.
Yeah. The other point to bring up, and this is probably self-evident but worth touching on, is with the budget backpacking gear, there's always a trade-off, right? Like obviously it's going to come at the expense of, sometimes it's weight, sometimes it's needing skills in order to actually be able to set it up, durability, and a big one that this could potentially age poorly is the ethics of the company that's making it. Because like if we had recorded this 2 weeks ago, we probably would have included Decathlon for a lot of the categories.
Totally. I was going to mention that too. Like Decathlon is on one of those lighter packs because I hadn't read the article until after I'd made
it. So it's important to call out that this is an accusation, not anything that's proved. So we don't know this for a fact, but there's an accusation that they have ties to forced labor with their equipment. So
naughty.
They were obviously a popular UL backpacking company, and I think that is now in question a bit. Again, allegations. I don't think anything's been proven, but
and it's not universal for all of their gear. Like they definitely have some super cheap stuff. Decathlon actually started making a DCF tent recently. There's only really one factory in the world that makes stuff out of DCF, and they're pretty well credited by all the other companies that use them. So it's hard to know, like, oh, is this the one that's the forced labor item, or is this one okay?
Yeah.
But
does that make a difference though? It's like, hey guys, we only use forced labor on some of our stuff, but buy the others.
Yeah.
I only murdered one person.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And it wasn't while using that product.
There were so many people that I could have murdered that I didn't.
Yeah.
So, like I said, there are probably brands that we're going to recommend in here that someone's going to email us and be like, actually, they eat puppies' heads. So again, there's oftentimes a trade-off with the budget stuff. It's not always ethics, but sometimes it is. And it's up to you to do the research on whether that purchase is something that you want to endorse. Okay, I think that's enough primer from us, right? Let's jump right into specific gear categories for the items that you would like to call out as good budget alternatives, or budget options, I should say.
Yeah. Want to start with, do you guys have something to start with?
So I'm going to lean mostly on you. I do have bits to add as we go, but I'll let you steer the ship. So whatever category you want to start with.
So maybe do big three, starting with a pack.
Cool.
Yeah, so I think there are 50, 60 liter packs that you can get from Walmart and Temu and AliExpress. And generally they're not made well enough to last a full through hike. People do it. It's happened. I've seen people, use Walmart tents for the whole AT.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to make an assumption that they're not durable enough to actually last a hike, and nothing's more expensive than having to replace in the middle on an emergency basis. So I'm going to kind of set the lowest end as Granite Gear. Some of their packs are $100, and they're well reviewed. Like, I think the Granite Gear Crown 3 series, they have a bunch of different sizes in it, and men's and women's and colors.
We've actually had a couple of guests on recently who've used and heavily endorsed, like Triple Crown hikers who've used the Crown and endorsed it. So I think that's a great call out right there.
Yeah. And those ones are a touch more expensive, like $140, $160. But there are $100 packs in their line there.
Yeah.
I think that's like a good, that's as cheap as you would want to go, and it's going to go the distance. Possibly better than some of the more expensive packs. Like, they're generally well made.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great one. Do I have anything for packs?
And then I think the step up from this, and this is actually the pack I recommend the most to budget-oriented people who have just a little bit more money and want it to last a long time, is the Durston Kakwa packs. The Ultra Good version's only $200, which is pretty awesome. They're really well made. People like them. They have lots of pockets. They're comfortable. They last a long time. The Ultra version's a little bit more expensive by $20 to $40. There's reason to believe that Ultra doesn't actually last as long. It's just more abrasion resistant. So I would say Ultra Grid for the budget person.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the popular backpacking packs seem to be sort of in that price range. Obviously there's the Z packs of the world, which is more high end.
Yeah.
But REI has the Trailmade 60 pack, which I think is like a decent budget option, but given that the other cottage industry options aren't that much more expensive, I'd probably just encourage someone to go in that direction.
Yeah. And then there's a couple packs that are more expensive, but you might be able to coupon. Like, Gossamer Gear does do discounts on their stuff occasionally. Sometimes through this podcast.
Yeah.
Check the show notes.
Yeah.
But I think like the Gorilla is like $275, but if you got a 20% off coupon on that, that's starting to get into the same range too. And that's one of the most popular packs out there for the Triple Crown trails, at least.
Yep. Yeah. I used the Gorilla on the entire, granted it was a different Gorilla at the time. That was when it was the 40 liter pack. But still they make good stuff, but I used it for the entire PCT. Great pack. I don't have much to add there.
Yeah. I think with my packs that I've used, I haven't changed much for price. Like, I did a lot of research based on weight for my first hike, and then since then, like, I'm in Zach's boat where I've tested things because they were free and I wanted to try them out, but I went based off of weight, not price, when I chose, and they were very durable. Like, they lasted. Everything I've used has been great, but I don't know where they size up in terms of price compared to other things. Yeah. So I'm relying to you on this one.
I'll also say the pack is the thing that's the easiest to regret if you make like, it's on your body for 12 or 14 hours a day. Like, $50 to $100 extra in this category specifically could go a long ways.
Yeah. Do you know anything about 3 Full Gear?
Oh, yeah. I assumed it was like 3FUL, but yeah,
okay.
I've seen their stuff online.
Yeah.
They do make some good stuff. I think they actually, they might be the parent company to Lanshan, which is that cheap tent.
Yeah, right.
I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen their name pop up as being a recommended option for like budget backpacks. But
yeah, they're good in the budget category for sure.
Yeah.
On all the stuff they make.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect segue. Let's go to tents because you'd already called out the brand.
Yeah. Tents, I think like your bottom rung, like cheapest thing that's going to probably last you a full through hike and is relatively cheap is the 3FUL Lanshan 1 Pro. It's like a single wall pyramid tent, trekking pole supported. A lot of 1 pole pyramid tents need a slightly longer trekking pole, so make sure you check that before you buy. It also doesn't come seam sealed, so it's $170. You're going to spend maybe $10 on a seam sealing kit, or if you're thrifty, you can go to the hardware store and mix some chemicals. And then it's going to be some time that you're trading versus, your next cheapest tent is that I would recommend is the Durson X-Mid 1, which is a double wall 2 trekking pole pyramid tent. But that one comes seam sealed for, I think they're up to $235 now.
Have you done the chemical mixings, seal your own tent?
I haven't bought any that come unsealed.
Yeah.
But I remember one of my friends on the CDT bought a Six Moons design tent that came unsealed, and he was trying to do it in the yard of a church, like in the middle of a through hike at like a weird small, hardware store, and it didn't go great. Like I don't think he got all the seams because he was in a rush and not the best conditions to be doing it.
Yeah, right.
He didn't have enough time to dry it out completely. And
do you know if the Six Moon Designs Skyscape Scout tent is seam sealed?
I don't think any of their tents come seam sealed. I think you can pay up for it. Some of the tents that come unsealed, you can pay like $30 extra to have them do it. But it's a time and space intensive process, which is why they don't do it and why they're cheaper than the ones that come with it.
Okay.
Do you have a price number where you would consider under this price is budget versus over this price is not budget when it comes to something like a tent?
Yeah, probably like $225, $240-ish range. Like I feel like the median tent price right now is a scooch over $300, just inflation.
Yeah.
Like all your Big Agnes and Nemo tents are going to be in that range. If you can get it under $200, that's really cheap. Like $225, $240 is like a solid budget price range.
I did see that the Fly Creek, because I was checking to see if trekking pole tents or freestanding tents would be the cheaper option, and I did see that the Fly Creek 2-person version is like 2 cents shy of $200.
Nice.
$199 and 98 cents on Steep and Cheap.
Oh,
so
that's like, I'm wondering if that's
what's
like
that?
a PFAS clearance model. Steep and Cheap is backcountry.com's outlet.
Got it.
And all those places I've heard did not successfully clear their inventory by the end of last year when they were supposed to. So now they're selling only to states that are still PFAS friendly online for super cheap, just trying to turn them out for new year models.
Well, that was what was interesting was I noticed the 1-person was more expensive. So you'd think more fabric, more materials, more time to make would mean it would be more expensive, but the smaller one is actually more costly.
I should know this. So what is the specific regulation now regarding PFAS?
I think this is all mostly being driven by state of California. Some of the other states are starting to adopt these rules too. I think they're not allowing long chain PFCs in a lot of different product categories, mostly consumer goods. So like no tent flies can use C6 and C8 used to be the standard DWRs on tents and raincoats. And I think they can still use C0, which is short chain. It breaks down easier. But it's the stuff that really doesn't break down at any appreciable scale is the stuff that's going out the window. And it's like all these companies are using national supply chain models. So it's really hard to just exclude California. So once one state in the U.S. says we can't do this anymore, they try and cut it out of all of their products. So they don't have to create special distribution.
Especially the most populous state in the country. That's a tough exception. Yeah.
And it's usually as California leading environmental based changes. So
way to go, California.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. Sweet. So just the thing I want to add for the tent conversation, I guess, for branching out to shelters. is the cheapest way to do it is with a tarp. But
Yeah.
that if this is your first through hike, I probably am not going to encourage you to go into it with a tarp because that is a high skill practice. You talk to people like Austin McDaniel, who went into his first through hike. He was on the podcast recently with a 5-pound base weight pack.
Yeah.
And like did the entire Triple Crown with that pack. So like,
yeah,
kudos to him. But I think he's the exception, not the rule. Most people
Totally.
need an easier setup, especially for their first go.
And they want fully enclosed.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's not my first, second, or third through hike, and I still have not dabbled in the tarp world, despite being so focused on keeping my pack weight as light as I can, because spooky.
Yeah.
Anything can like come cuddle me under the tarp at night.
Yeah.
And that I will never sleep well knowing.
But there are people that are okay with those sacrifices, and if that's the case, Gossamer Gear's Solo tarp is just $90. They're twin, which is what Jabo used when we did that long section of the Colorado Trail. It was $130. So, obviously you're not getting the technology and the amount of fabric that you're getting with like a 2-wall tent, but if you're just trying to save money and you're okay with the skill acquisition necessary and all of the psychological aspects of doing the tarp thing, then that's a good way to save some cash.
I think there's a $40 or $50 tarp on AliExpress that's like RSCC. I'd have to look that one up, but I've seen it recommended on Reddit quite a bit for people who are like, I don't know if I'm going to like a tarp. They're like, buy this really cheap one and find out for $40 instead of $140.
Yeah.
Know?
When you were talking about Six Moon Designs, was that the Skyscape you were talking about or a different one?
I've seen the Deschutes Plus. It's like it's a tarp, but with perimeter netting, so things can't crawl under it as easy. But all their tents are pretty budget, so that like the Lunar Solo is recommended quite a bit. I think that one's about $200 if I recall.
Yeah, they've got this. It's called the Skyscape Scout hiking tent, and that one's $160.
Yeah,
and it's a one-person tent. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Is that the one that we just called out?
Yeah.
It looks like obviously there's not a lot of room to play inside, but if you're not going to be playing in your tent, you've got.
And those are well-regarded tents too. Like they're not even cheaply made. Like they're pretty solid.
Yeah. I've also seen people reference using a polyethylene tarp just from like a hardware store.
Oh yeah.
So I don't even know how much that would be. Maybe like $20 or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to figure out the tarp game, that would be another good way to cut your teeth.
Those might not pack into a regular size backpack very well.
That's probably
they're
true.
pretty bulky.
That's probably true. Sweet. Next category, I'll let you steer the ship.
Yeah, I think rounding out the big three would be sleeping bags. This is probably the hardest one to budget new. You can get synthetic insulation sleeping bags quite a bit cheaper than down. There aren't a lot of people that make high quality synthetic sleeping bags though. I know there's, again, like stuff you can get on AliExpress and stuff like that, but they're just hard to actually recommend.
Yeah.
Whereas like for $250 to $350, you can get a down sleeping bag that's going to be way lighter, pretty warm. Like I would hesitate to advise anyone sleeping in anything under 40-degree conditions to go synthetic because they just get so bulky.
Yeah.
There's also like a longevity component. Synthetic insulation kind of fractures when you roll it up a lot. Down is actually incredibly resilient. Like if you read Western Mountaineering, they have some articles about like down longevity. If you're storing it properly, it probably will last you the rest of your life at 90 to 95% of its original loft. Like it can be an investment for life, whereas the synthetic has a timeline because they're just not as durable.
Yeah. That's interesting. So 92 to 95%, does that make a good justification for getting a sleeping bag or quilt slightly warmer than you think you would need for your first through hike? That way, like when it does lose some of its insulation, you can still use it. Like as opposed to like getting for something at like 30 degrees, which might be the limit for a lot of people for a through hike. Once it loses some of the insulation, it's like a summer bag at that point.
Yeah, totally. I don't sleep super warm, so I'm not even like, I had a 0-degree sleeping bag for part of the CDT, and when I got to New Mexico, the nighttime temps were back up in the 60s. I actually slept pretty good. So I think most people aren't bothered by something that's a little bit too warm at the start, and if you age into the correct temperature in a year or two, I don't think you're going to notice too much. So that probably is a good move.
Yeah.
One thought I had while we were talking about synthetic sleeping bags being bulkier is just like a disclaimer to the listener if you are jumping into your first through hike and listening to this as a way to prep. Even though we led with backpacks first, being our first one we covered, I would make my decision on which backpack to purchase last.
Yeah.
Because if you find the perfect budget-friendly backpack and you think this is great and you get it, that might be like good. But then if you keep listening and you decide, okay, I want to go with a synthetic even though it's bulkier, and I want to make this gear choice even though it's slightly more weight but the cost is less, you want to make sure you have enough room in your backpack and you pick the right size backpack that it can fit all your shit. So I would pick everything that you want to put in it first, see how much space that takes up, and then choose your backpack based on how many liters you need.
Yeah, great point.
Just a disclaimer there.
Yeah.
And to your point about synthetic often being the cheapest, the one that I wanted to flag here was REI's Trailmade 20, which is under $100, but to your point, it's over 3 pounds. So
yeah. And
like
it's probably like 30 liters on its own. Like
yeah.
It's going to be the majority of your bag.
Right. You're not getting that thing in an ultralight backpack. So, yeah, I think the better way to save money with this stuff is, well, first accepting like this is not a category where you want to go super skinny with it. Save money with sales.
Yeah.
And another plug for
or
the
used, yeah.
Yeah, or used. Another plug for the Trex newsletter is we will oftentimes highlight like the standout sales. So
yeah.
But yeah, sleeping bag is /quilt is a category where you probably want to spend up on that one.
Yeah.
If you can't get a good one secondhand.
Yeah. As far as like specific recommendations, assuming we're not doing synthetic, I feel like the floor for a down sleeping bag right now is $280 to $300.
Yeah.
There's some like $650 fill power stuff from REI. I think that's a little bit cheaper. And REI does they turn over their models every year for sleeping bags, or not every year, but close to it. And so the last year's is probably going to go on clearance at some point for a 40% discount. And that's a good time to scoop those up if you have the luxury of time.
Yeah. I know Kelty does sleeping bags in the budget range. I'm looking at the Cosmic 20, which is a $550 loft down at $160. So
yeah, that's pretty good.
More compressible than I would imagine most synthetic bags.
Yeah.
$550 is not a very high fill power. Like you're looking at the upper echelon brands, Catabatic and Light & Equipment, they're doing like $850, $950. So it's not going to compress as much. But again, if you need to save money, this is an option to do it.
Yeah. This is also a category. I don't know if you guys are familiar with hammock gear quilts. So they do quilts. In years past, they had like a hammock gear burrow econ and then like a premium model. They're now down to consolidating those into one model that's like more in the middle of the price range. But they still run like for a small company, they usually can't do big discounts. They still do a big discount usually around Black Friday. In years past, it's been up to 40%.
Wow.
Which is that could bring the price down to under $200.
Sure. So yeah, what's the MSRP on those?
Very dependent on the size. I'm assuming like a 5'6" to 6 foot, 20 degree, something that's kind of good for everyone. I think their like full MSRP is $340 right now.
Okay.
But assuming you can get a 20 to 30% discount, that's still pretty good.
Yeah.
And again, not the best place to save money on stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, to your point, if you take care of it, it'll last a lifetime. So
yeah.
This is a big investment.
Yeah, and they're also like in that configuration, they're like 20 to 22 ounces, which is going to be, a pound or two lighter than a 550 fill down bag.
Yeah.
So also has some good returns in that category as well.
Another thought on just jumping back to tents is the ground cloth. I at first got a super, super thin ground cloth because the price was cheap and the weight was cheap. And then I realized I might as well not be using anything because it's not actually protecting from twigs and stuff. And to unfold it after I've just scrunched it up is like unfolding cellophane, or saran wrap.
Was it Polycro?
I think so. Yeah. It's I don't remember. Yeah, it was the Polycro, I think. But Tyvek. A sheet of Tyvek is what I ended up switching to. I quickly threw my Polycro into the trash because it just made me mad.
As a lot of people do.
Yeah. So that was one where I thought, hey, I'm being super budget. It's $13 for a sheet and it weighs nothing. So best of both worlds. But again, then I doubled the price because then I spent like $19 on a sheet of Tyvek. And if I just got that first, that would have been better. But a sheet of Tyvek will last you your whole through hike.
It's also something that you can really easily get out of a construction dumpster.
Yeah.
It might not always say Tyvek on it. It's kind of a decreasingly popular brand, but that stuff goes in the dumpster quite a bit. So it's like you can wander around a construction site and be like, hey, can I look through your dumpster and see if there's any in there?
Well, I was going to say, I've also known people who have gone to construction sites and just asked them, like, hey, do you have a scrap piece? I only need about this size. And they've been happy to give it.
Yeah,
so
it's cheap.
At that point, it's free.
When they're buying rolls and rolls and rolls of it, like 3 linear feet of it is nothing to them.
Yeah, and they're probably not used to that question, so they're probably just entertained by you in general. So if you like have some outgoingness and some extroversion, that could definitely be great. But when you Google like Thru-Hiking groundcloths, I mean, there are options that are $180. I just do not see that as something that you need to spend more on. The other thing about a cheap piece of Tyvek is if you need to make a sign to hitchhike into town or out of town, you are going to feel so okay with yourself writing on that thing with a Sharpie. I had people sign mine like it was just a fun thing versus if I bought a $100, Dyneema ground cloth, I'm not touching that with a Sharpie. So you get more functionality out of it too because you don't have to treat it as preciously.
This is something you can skip entirely too. I haven't used a ground sheet since 2016.
Yeah.
And I
You're
figure
just very particular about the campsite?
Kind of, not always. I just figure by the time I'm done using a tent, like there's something else probably wrong with it too. On the tent I used for the CDT, it was Dyneema, so kind of a different use case. But the fly had enough pinholes that I wanted to get rid of it before the ground sheet was bad enough that I wanted to get rid of it. So, and then I sold it for like, I think I sold that tent for like $280, and it was like a $550 at the time dollar tent. It's a little bit more expensive now, so I got half my money back. And as long as you sell it before it completely explodes, you can usually, make your return on it.
For me, I sometimes carry one, I sometimes don't. It depends on the tent I'm carrying.
Yeah.
Because if I'm carrying a Z-Pax duplex, that bottom is so thick that I do not need to also carry a ground sheet. But if I'm carrying my Gossamer Gear the One, all that material feels pretty thin. So I want that extra protection so that if I'm on a spot that's not the flattest or has some rocks or pine cones or twigs, I don't want to puncture the floor of that.
Yeah.
So for me, it definitely also depends on what tent.
Yeah.
Probably also depends on your sleeping pad, which we can go to next. I'm curious, were you using an inflatable or a foam?
I used inflatables from birth until about 2019. And they work. Most people don't find them as comfortable, but it's definitely cheaper and they last a lot longer than an inflatable.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
but on that trip, I did half of it on the CDT. I did half of it with a 1/8-inch sheet of foam and an Uberlight inflatable. Halfway through the trip, it was getting a little too cold, so I switched over to just a X-Therm, which is pretty durable.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm anal about having a ground sheet because I'm on an inflatable pad and I'm not using anything as durable as an X-Therm. So yeah, good to know that there's like an entire ecosystem with these decisions. Because if you're on a foam pad, then something poking through your bathtub tent is not the best, but it's also not gonna end your world. Whereas if you pop your sleeping pad, that's not a good place to be.
Yeah.
Let's talk sleeping pad.
Yeah, I think the big breakover point here is foam versus inflatable. Like the Nemo Tensor, Thermarest, Ridge Rest, those guys are about $40 to $50 now, depending on where you get them. There is like a cheaper category. I keep one in my car that's like $20 at Walmart. That's a slightly less comfortable clone of the Ridge Rest. You can also get a sheet of foam off of whatever online retailer you want for $20 as well. So easy place to save some money if it's comfortable enough for you to sleep on. Part of that's people's individual anatomy and part of that's campsite selection as well. Those really impacted sites, the AT shelters with wooden boards are not going to be as comfortable as someone who can find a nice patch of grass or something like that that's naturally a bit softer. Pine duff is pretty soft.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've used my foam sleeping pad and been totally fine with it. I do notice that I'm more sensitive to the hard ground as I age, which sucks. But the things that are nice about the foam pads, like you mentioned, like they are between $20 and $50 depending on the brand and where you get it, and that is starkly different from like the inflatable versions, which you can go from a Thermarest Z Lite for $30 to a Thermarest X Lite for over $200, and that's like an entire tent if you're looking at the budget tents, in comparison to the difference you'd spend on one of these. I also think like put a lot of thought. We talked about buying it right the first time. Put a lot of thought into how you sleep before deciding that an inflatable equals a more comfortable night's sleep. Because for me, I toss and turn a lot in the night. I roll and I try to get comfy in different positions. And I would find when I used the X Lite that I would end up just on the ground and the X Lite would be next to me because I would roll, it would slide out from next to me, and then I'd wake up like extra cold because I was on nothing. So if I was someone that didn't toss and turn, maybe I would put more thought into the X Lite. But I had gotten it because people said it was a more comfortable night's sleep, and I didn't equate how I slept into my buying process. And then I ended up spending more money because I got the Z Lite anyway. And if you are someone who is a sensitive, like hard ground sleeper, what I've done as it's gotten kind of more difficult for me is focused on where it hurts when I'm sleeping on the foam pad. And if it's my hips, where it's like, man, my hips are getting sore from just being too close to the ground, the joy of a foam pad is you can double up the foam as you're accordioning it anywhere. So I will accordion the foam back and then over where my hips are. So I'm actually getting 3 layers of the foam just on that hip section, and then the single layer of foam on all the other sections. And that fixed the problem of aging at the moment for me in terms of sleeping pads.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on the Nemo switchback versus the Z Lite?
I think they're probably pretty similar. I think the switchback, the way that they stack those cells into each other when you fold it, makes a slightly higher stack height. That also probably makes it a little bit less durable. Like the foam pads, especially the ones that are corrugated or have that like stacked pattern, those do wear out eventually. And I think the Nemo is probably a little bit more susceptible to that, but also probably ends at the same place, so it doesn't really matter that much.
Cool. Yeah, I'm not a foam sleeping pad person, so I can't really talk on the subject, but I think you guys hit all the high points already. Yeah.
There are some budget inflatables out there. I'm not super familiar. I feel like there's a lot of social media advertisements for cheap inflatable pads right now. I think is Nature Hikes has an inflatable pad maybe. I've been hearing a lot about them recently. I don't know. There are budget inflatable pads. The pads is like so specific to how you sleep. It's a good idea to like go into REI usually has a display of pre-inflated pads that you can test out. And if you can, even if it's not the exact pad you're going to buy, if you can test it out and be like, this shape does or doesn't work for me, I need a wide, I need a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. If you can figure that out before you buy and avoid a second purchase because you made the wrong choice the first time, it's probably worth going and finding a retail store that does that.
Yeah. I know a few backpackers that use Climate's inflatable pads, which tend to be on the cheaper side. To my understanding, based on these backpackers, they must be durable. I think the trade-off here is that it's tough to beat Thermarest's ratio of R value and weight. Yeah. The fact that it's both warm and light is what makes it expensive. So there's trade-offs with this stuff, like I said, and the trade-off with the lighter ones is going to be probably the weight.
Yeah. A way to extend a sleeping pad that isn't very warm into colder conditions is to put foam under or over it. Under probably better for poking through the floor of the tent, but putting two together does work, especially if it's a foam and an inflatable.
Yeah, we're outside of backpacking budgetly with this thought, but one thing I have heard in response to me rolling off the inflatable one that I have not tested, but someone suggested, and I thought that's really smart, is to take those little like Velcro stickers that you can get and put the rough side of the Velcro sticker on the bottom of your inflatable pad in the four corners, and then put the soft side either on the floor of your tent where you usually would put it, or on your foam where it would usually sit, and it's soft side of the Velcro touching the sleeping pad versus the hard side of the Velcro facing down towards either the foam or the tent, and that will hold it in place allegedly if you do toss and turn.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can't use an inflatable if you toss and turn. There are hacks like that, but that leaves the world of budget.
Yeah, or getting a wide pad, or there are pads that have like rails on the side that are a little bit thicker, and that kind of pushes you back to the center. Or similar to what you're saying, like people put silicone dots on their tent floor, does the same thing.
Yeah.
And if you have a DCF tent, Z-Packs does make a DCF sticker with a min hook on it, and you can use like a pad strap that holds your pad to the floor of the tent.
Yeah, I've tried the pad straps for like a quilt to the pad, and that is great for keeping the quilt on the pad, but less for keeping me on the pad.
Yeah.
But I want to try the glue dots if I ever go back to the inflatable. I just, to this day, have never gone back to my inflatable. It has been in a box in my garage ever since. So.
I mean, if the foam
Teach
works, the
their
foam
own.
works.
Yeah.
Let's go to footwear. I'm feeling this is going to be similar to the sleeping bag conversation.
Yeah, you need the right footwear.
Yeah.
There's just so much, like, it's like a backpack. It's like you're using it for 12, 14 hours a day. You want to have the thing that's right for you. And the cheap option, you might put it on and it gives your whole foot blisters, and the one that's $30 more might not.
Yeah. This is one I can actually speak to because I'd gotten some free gear for my first hike on the AT drink. And the footwear brand that sent me stuff was probably not the most highly regarded. And I used their boot for the first 500 miles of the trail, which actually worked great, heavy boot, the trade-off there. But somewhere near Damascus, I traded to their trail runner, and couldn't have been a worse experience. Like, not only did it tear a hole on the second day, but I was also getting blisters that quickly as well. I don't think this brand sells trail runners anymore, but I don't want to slander them anyways. Moral of the story is, this is definitely not a category to go cheap on. In terms of finding the right thing, you can also find very expensive footwear that doesn't work for you. So that doesn't, spending more doesn't always ensure that you're going to have a good experience. But there's no easy way to solve the footwear problem other than, I would say, aim for a company that has good reputability in terms of its durability. So there's a popular trail runner brand in recent years that is comfortable because it's zero drop. The mesh stretches, so it's comfortable for your foot, but it will disintegrate. Like, the uppers will tear apart at 200-300 miles. I'll just say ultra. But what I actually have heard that the newest model, the 9, is actually making a point to fix that. So
interesting.
I think the newest model probably has some optimism behind it. But as someone that's used Ultra a lot, especially the Lone Peak, I really like the shoe. It's just not the most durable option. So if you've got the money, no problem blowing through 7 pairs of Lone Peaks on a thru hike. But again, if you're trying to save money, go for a brand that is going to get you more than 300 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said this on the last episode, so apologies if you heard this then and you're like, God, broken record. But I had a pair of Merrells that were, I can't remember the name of them because this was like 2016, 2015 when I was using them all the time. But they were super, super, super lightweight shoes, and I had gone into the backpacking world with that mindset of a pound on your feet is 5 on your back. So I thought, man, these shoes are great. There's no pounds on my feet. And wore them on all my day hikes, wore them everywhere, thought they were fantastic, was ready to buy 6 pairs of them leading up to the PCT because REI was having a sale, and I knew to my core that these were the shoes that worked for me because I'd worn them on so many day hikes. And I got on the PCT, and I had never felt that kind of foot pain before because I had never tested them with so many miles in a day. I didn't realize that I would be doing close to 20 miles a day so early on the PCT because I never would have initiated it, but the people I was hiking with wanted to, and I started with a friend, and I wanted to stay with that friend, and so I would agree because it was like, okay, I could just push myself a little further, and not having tested them under that mileage completely changed the game for me. So extra emphasis on it may be seemingly budget friendly to buy all your shoes at once. If the shoes that you really like are on sale and the sale price looks great, don't do that, because it's just, you might think hiking from your test hikes, from your shakedown hikes, but day after day after day doing that mileage on your feet is different, and you have to do it to be able to feel what it will actually feel like. The other shoes that I got, because the price and the weight were perfect, were the shoes that I was going to use for my camp shoes. And I will stand by these if you are solely using them as camp shoes, which is the Zero shoes. You could do the barefoot sandals, you could do the clouds. The barefoot sandals are currently on sale on Zero for $15. They're usually $50, and now they're $14.99. So Zero does a bunch of sales. They've got 3 models in the front that are $14.99, $14.99, $23.99, and those are great. Those are budget friendly, especially if it's going to be like a camp shoe. You don't want to spend a lot of money on it. What I had learned my lesson on with them was I was trying to wear them for water crossings, and then I wouldn't take them off and initially switch back to my sneakers, because I'd be like, I'll just, there's another water crossing in a half a mile. I'll just walk through this part of the desert in them, cross the next one, and then change them. That way I'm not really slowing myself down. And I got blood blisters, big blood blisters on both of my heels by the end of the second or third day on trail, because I was walking from stream to stream in them. Now I use Bedrocks, definitely different price bracket, but I wear Bedrocks because I also plan to hike in them and not just wear them at camp. So if you're just wearing these as a camp shoe, I recommend Zero if they're on sale, because they do run the sales often and they're lightweight. You can make them pretty small to fit them in your pack. But if you're going to be hiking in them too, that changes the category of what you're looking at in my mind.
Yeah. And to Chauncey's point, like, footwear is probably something that's going to take a couple tries to figure out. And if you can figure out something cheap, great. It just might not end up that way. Good to give yourself a lot of time before your trip to try and do that, but the mileage makes a big difference.
Yeah. And the weight on your back and the consecutive days.
Yeah.
You don't really know until you're actually in like a thru-hiking context if something's going to work for you, because I've had that exact same scenario. I will say on the flip side of that, once you do figure out, like, you've tested something on trail, if that particular model goes on sale, buy as many as you can get, because I think people hear that advice before they figure out what actually works for them, and then they apply it, and that's a misuse of money. Once you actually know what works, and you see like they're doing like a old model 20% sale, get as many models as you can afford, because sometimes when they update the model just doesn't work with you anymore. At very least, it's most common that the newest model is going to be a little bit more expensive. Either way, 20% off is 20% off. And
when they discontinued the Ultra Raptor 1, I bought 6 pairs on clearance for 40% off, and something I probably would have gotten for that price anyways, but I was just like, I know the shoe works for me. I've already done 3,000 miles in them, and I don't want it to change in a bad way, so I'm still working through those from I did that like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's what you did is something I've kicked myself for not doing, because I really loved, and I don't remember which models they were of either, but I really loved the Lone Peaks for Ultra, and I really loved the Timps. And the ones that I had worn on the AT and the CT on the PCT and the CT in 2017 and 2018, like, felt great. And then they changed the models, and I remember being like, why do we need to change things? Why do we always need to change things? We don't need a new thing every year. We could just keep the same thing. But they didn't have the ones that I had loved anymore. And I remember when they went on sale, and I remember the thought of, well, I've now tried them and I know they work on trail. Should I get a bunch? But I still had that thought in my mind from the start of trail when I had the wrong shoes that I was considering buying a bunch, and I talked myself out of it. And now there's so many options and so many models, and they all feel kind of different. And I got to a place where, like, the Ultras I have behind that backpack, I wore for 900 miles. They're blown out on both sides, because I was just like, I don't want to change. I know this one works for me. I don't want to try something different that doesn't work. Like, I'm scared to, because all the new models are different. And so that's one thing where I'm like, damn, once I knew, should have just bought a bunch of them.
Yeah, but you have to know first, for sure.
Right, you have to know first.
otherwise you're trying to sell them at like an 80% discount and no one wants them.
Yeah, and the other thing is like you're not just knowing how they feel on your feet when you're hiking in them. Part of like you have to know first is I would only feel confident doing that if I'd already completed probably a through hike in a certain shoe before doing a like hoarding type of purchase, because something that happens to a lot of people on through hikes is their feet will grow in size. Sometimes both feet, sometimes one feet. I've had my feet grow a half size. I also have hiked with people whose feet have grown 2 sizes. They've gone from a 7 to a 9. I've gone from a 6 to a 6.5. I've gone from a 6.5 to a 7, depending on the shoe. But if you haven't done a full through hike and you're like, oh, well, I know after 400 miles that these shoes are great on me, I'm going to buy 18 pairs, you might not have done enough miles to know if your feet are going to grow or how much the range of what they might grow is. And you might get 10 pairs that are a size 7 and end up realizing that 500 miles into a hike, you slowly become a size 9, so you want to be sure that you have the whole picture before you start hoarding.
Yeah. I will say, as far as like making actual recommendations for people, I know a guy who's one of those, 50,000 miles. He knows what he's doing. Wears New Balances. They come in like a triple E width, so they will make a width that works for pretty much anyone. They tend not to have the, trail runner type of rugged sole, but it doesn't actually matter that much on a Triple Crown trail, in my opinion.
It's funny that you say that, because I used cheap New Balances for like the last 1,600 miles of the AT. I think it ended up pricing out to be like what an expensive trail runner would have been, because it was like a tennis shoe. It wasn't meant for that. I was on my ass more than people around me because the tread wasn't there, but at that time it was impossible to find trail runners in a wide shoe, so that's why I went with New Balance as well. But yeah, I don't think I was getting more than probably 200 or 300 miles. But I want to say the model I was getting was probably like $65-$70. So it ended up evening out. Footwear is just one of those things where it's going to be a journey to find the thing that works for you. But once you find that thing, just hoard it to your best ability. Yeah. And we'd be remiss if we didn't shout out today's title sponsor, Topo Athletic. Chauncey and I are still in the somewhat early days of testing this, but we've talked to a lot of people, Trek reviewers. This is what turned me on to Topo in the first place, that people saying they're getting 1,000 miles out of a pair of shoes. So, it's not the cheapest trail runner, still in the conversation of like what a trail runner costs. But if you're going to get anywhere from 800 to 1,000 miles out of a trail runner, like it ends up, cost per mile ends up being one of the cheapest options out there.
I was going to ask what you guys think are the high mileage shoes, because I wear La Sportiva Ultra Raptor and probably will for a really long time, because I got 1,000 miles out of them consistently.
Damn, that's awesome.
But there aren't that many, and no manufacturer is going to recommend that you wear a shoe for 1,000 miles because they're doing their durability testing on actual runners who, the bounce, like they rebound worse, like all of them do after 200 to 500 miles. None of them are going to say go to 1,000, but from people on the trail, like Ultra Raptor is awesome. And the uppers like never tear. I've never had one tear. Karen might have torn a pair.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. I haven't gotten to test La Sportivas. I've tried them on. I've tried on ones that are in colors that I'm like, man, if I was buying based on color, these would be on my feet. The thing that for me doesn't work with La Sportivas is I feel like they have a very narrow foot.
I will say I went to a ski boot fitter this winter and I took my foot out of my shoe and he's like, wow, you might have the skinniest foot I've ever seen in my life. From a professional. I don't think it like looks that crazy, but like I wear a 96 with ski boot.
No, that's a skinny foot. Yeah. Show the camera.
Someone on the internet's really gonna like this.
We're probably at exact opposite ends of the spectrum, because I have I have a wakeboard. That's the thumbnail for this one. Of that.
Yeah. You might want to give them a try again, though. And the last couple of years, they've started making. Well, they've made wide models of their shoes for a while, but they haven't had them in the U.S. market. Okay. They started bringing the wide models over to the U.S.
Yeah,
and I would just assume U.S. has the fattest feet of any market.
Well, that was just it. So that's like I had mentioned to whoever the store person was when I was trying on the one with like the best color that I could have ever made for myself. It's like a combo of different colors, and I loved it. And they were like, "How does it feel?" And I was like, "It is like I think too narrow." And they were like, "Yeah, they're made for Europeans." Yeah. And I've never felt more like a fat American piece of trash than in that moment. when I was like, I do not have dainty European feet.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
One thought I have still on shoes before we move on is if you do find that the perfect shoe for you happens to be one where you're like, everything's great about this shoe, I just start to feel like the ground feels a lot harder on my foot a lot sooner than I'd like, and I could get more miles out of this shoe if I didn't have the tread wear as much and the cushion on the bottom compress as much. Something that could help make things a little more budget friendly is instead of maybe replacing a shoe that does that every 200 to 300 miles and going through 5 pairs of shoes or 7 pairs of shoes, if you were to get, I know what's worked for other people on trail is one of those super feet insoles that you can get that add that cushion back. Those are $50. So you could do the math and say, okay, if I add some super feet insoles that are right for my foot type and make it feel better for me, and I can get an extra 100 miles or an extra 150 miles out of them by using those insoles, and those insoles are only $50 versus a new pair, which is $150, maybe adding one of those towards the end of the life of a pair of shoes could be more budget friendly, because when you add up the little bit extra in mileage that it gets you on top of what it normally would, you might save yourself, the cost of another pair of shoes in the process in the long run. So things like that are hacks I've seen other people do to make their shoes last longer before making a new purchase.
Yeah. I've always had bad luck with the high-end insoles, and I've also talked to people that have had great luck with it. Just another piece of evidence that footwear is there's a million different ways you can cut it. So
the person that I know that used them on the PCT for the whole length, I hiked with him from the southern terminus to Rainy Pass, and I remember in the desert, the issue he was having was figuring out which of the insoles were the right ones for his feet, because they have different types. So that's the same thing where it's better to go to REI and figure that out before hiking so you're not in a rush. But once he figured it out, I think he exclusively used them from that point on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm more in I think Andrew Skirka has said this too, but if a shoe doesn't work out of the box, I tend not to buy it. But for some people, none of them work out of the box and they have to buy it. So
it wasn't that it wasn't working out of the box, it was that it was wearing down too fast. Yeah.
Did I mention the Topo discount code? Because that would be very perfect for budget backpacking. Use code TREKWINTER15 to save 15%. Again,
that ain't nothing, especially if you're buying multiple pairs.
Yep. Where should we go next? Socks. I like your tip here, and I think this is probably we were all going to arrive to this conclusion, and most through hikers would, but I'll let you take it.
Yeah, I've always worn Darn Tough for long hikes, and I've sent back a lot of pairs, probably 10, and they just sometimes you can go into a retail store, you hand them a gross pair of socks and they hand you a brand new pair of socks for free. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Or you can mail them in and you're spending $5 on postage one way.
Yeah.
But it's free socks for life.
Right.
So it's hard not to recommend that for someone who can spend $25 on their first pair of socks instead of $5 from a cheap competitor that's going to last a third of a through hike at best.
Yeah.
Yeah, and mailing them in is definitely the best option to make sure that you're getting the next pair. I used to have really, really good luck at REI where I would bring them in when they'd have holes, and REI would look up, the sock. They'd see that I'd purchased it, and they'd replace it, no problem. And after the AT, I started running into issues at REI where they put a time limit on it, which is so weird because it's a lifetime warranty, but REI placed a time limit on it where if I bought the socks over a year prior, they wouldn't do the exchange.
I think what's happening is, from my knowledge, REI's contract to purchase Darn Tough socks does not include their lifetime warranty.
Interesting.
At least for in-person exchanges. And your previous exchanges were being covered under the REI general warranty that they changed to the 1-year limit for all their stuff. But that being said, I think you could probably still mail those in. Or go to, if I bought a pair of Darn Tough socks at REI and exchanged them at whatever outdoor store near you, they're probably still going to take them.
Yeah, no, that's my point, is that they will still take them if you mail them in. But when I had gone to REI, because it was my first time having dealt with someone saying no, I was like, wait, what? Like, I thought they had a lifetime warranty. I'm so confused. What do you mean only a year? And I had the other new pair in my hands, and it's hard to be at the register and be like, this is the pair I was thinking I was going home with. I'm not going to buy them now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to fill out a form and I'm going to mail them in. But it is nice. Like, how much have I spent on socks in, 2017 to 2015? 8 years of through hiking is like, I could have done under $100. I definitely am under $200.
Yeah.
Because I just haven't had to buy new pairs. I've just had to exchange the ones that have gotten holes. And if they haven't gotten holes yet, they're still good enough to wear. And if they've gotten holes, you can mail them in. And just because, the main point is, just because one retailer tells you that they can't honor it doesn't mean that anything's happened to the warranty. Go through Darn Tough's website and they will have the form that you send them in with.
Yeah. Did you guys know that Darn Tough spun off a sub-brand that makes wide specific fit Darn Toughs?
No.
I don't remember what it's called, and I don't know if it has the same warranty, but I had heard that even for my narrow foot, I find them a little tight sometimes, which is why some people don't like them. Some people also just prefer a nylon sock, but they started making
wide open socks.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Do they have the warranty still?
Hold please. Lifetime guarantee.
Yeah. So if your problem with Darn Toughs is that they squeeze your foot too much, they have fixed that through a sub-brand.
That's interesting, because I have wide feet and I've never experienced that.
Yeah.
But
I've experienced the
shot.
squeezing a little bit after I've washed them a certain amount of times.
Yeah.
Like, after they've been through the wash, like, and I'm talking, again, we're thinking, like, I've got 8 pairs that I've used over 8 years of hiking, somewhere around there. So these have had a lot of washes, and I wear them when I day hike and I wear them when I ski, like, I wear them in different things. But a fun fact about Darn Tough, I always like sharing this because I learned this on the AT and I thought it was so cool, is darning is like a sewing term. It's like the skill or activity of mending a hole in knitted material by interweaving yarn is the definition of darning.
Yeah.
And so Darn Tough doesn't mean that they're heckin' tough. It means that they are tough against holes.
That's
Which blew my mind when I learned it. So there you go.
That's a good fun fact.
Yeah, I love that one.
I don't have anything to add other than, the warranty is, there's no like asterisks about it. Like, if your sock is half missing, they're still going to honor it. I've never had a situation or have heard anyone say like they didn't honor the warranty. So
if you're prone to losing stuff, they will not cover a single lost sock.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have both when you send them in or exchange them, which don't dry your packs on the outside of your sock. It doesn't work that well anyways.
Yeah.
But that's a good way to lose a sock and not get your free exchange.
Sure.
Yeah, and I have had, not from Darn Tough directly, but I have had from outfitters, just like the feedback that the hole isn't enough of a hole for them to honor the exchange. Like, it's just like where you start to see the fabric thinning, and it's getting to that place and it's not fully there yet. So you might run into some outfitters where your hole isn't wholly enough for them to do that in-person switch.
You're getting very close to a poly clip there.
Yeah. I have, and I don't recommend this. This goes based on your own morals and beliefs, but I have seen people who have been told that by outfitters that will take like a nail file and just make the hole a little holier.
Yeah,
rather than wait
never
till they're...
do that. That's an immoral thing to do.
Yeah, I've seen people do that when they're close to a stretch where they know, hey, I'm not going to see another outfitter for 300 miles. It's now or never. There's right ways to do things and wrong ways to do things, and only you can judge where your moral compass stands.
We're talking about budget though, so
Yeah,
that's true. Rain gear. So we've talked about sleeping bags and footwear, which are categories to go to budget on. This is one that is easy.
Yeah.
So easy.
Yeah. So I'll let you guys take it.
Well, Chance, you do the $1 rain poncho, right?
Yeah, I was going to let you say the frog togs first because I imagine that would be where you were going with it. But
yeah,
I'll do my dollar poncho first if we want to do that.
Yeah, no, I think that's
hard to beat.
Yeah.
It's like The Price is Right. $1, you win.
Yeah.
Plastic bag.
I had a bunch of questions on I had some photos. I haven't done my videos for the Northville Placid Trail yet. Those come up next after I finish the Teton Crest. But I had some photos where I was in a rain poncho on the MPT, and I got some comments being like, "Where'd you get the poncho? Where'd you get the poncho?" And I'm like, "It was in the back of my dad's truck." Yeah. You know, like it was just there, so I took it and I gave it back when I was done. But I started the PCT with Frog Togs. Great budget option. I'll let you cover the nitty gritty of those. But then I ended up on the AT getting like a Patagonia like lightweight rain jacket that soaked through. I got a thicker I think it was a Marmot rain jacket, just because like the AT, they always tell you there's gonna be so much water, so I was like, I gotta make sure. I paired them with Montbell rain pants. I love rain pants, partly because I also use them when I'm cold, and I also use them when it's windy, so it's not just for rain, it's because I'm a cold person. But definitely not budget. Where I land now is that I use a gas station poncho. Usually it's like in a small bag. It's clear or white. And it has worked so well for me. They're not super thin, but I don't have to treat them gently because I know it's just a gas station poncho. They're usually pretty big, so it'll go over me and my pack, so I don't have to worry about also having a pack cover. And if I'm ever like really up Schitt's Creek and it's fucking downpouring, I will also like tie my Tyvek around my neck like a cape that goes over my backpack too, so then I get the layer of the poncho and the layer of the Tyvek and not a thing gets wet.
I will say ponchos in general, even if you get a fancy one, their downfall is wind. Like if you're on an exposed ridgeline and it's blowing at 40 miles an hour and all you have is a poncho, your best bet is probably to just descend and camp for a little bit, which is fine. You can do that.
But I've found hacks for that. Like I have been on the Ozark Highlands Trail. It had been super windy on the day that it was raining, that I used my poncho. And yeah, when it's blowing, it's like, what the fuck are you doing? But I would take the bottom corners, the 4 bottom corners of the poncho, and I'd tuck them into the bottoms of my hip belt.
Nice.
So it would still cover everything. And I wouldn't tuck them from the top down so that the hip belt was exposed. I'd tuck them from the bottom up so that it still covered that part. And once you've got those 4 corners tucked, you pretty much don't have that issue with the wind anymore.
Yeah.
So that's been my hack for it. That's really worked.
Yeah.
Frog Togs?
Yeah. I've never been a Frog Togs person. The rain pants, do not buy the rain pants. Everyone says they're terrible and they rip immediately. But the jacket, the Ultralight 2, has pretty good reviews. People are like, why would I spend any more money? It's lasted me as long as I could possibly use it, and they're pretty cheap. So that's like a good budget buy right there.
The only thing that I had issues with the Frog Togs when I had them was that because the inside feels like it's almost like a felty material, I would get really hot in it, because not only was it like really insulating the sweat and stuff, but it was also like adding like maybe like the feeling of a blanket over me as I was doing it. And then the issue that came from that issue was that because I felt really hot with that material touching me, I'd sweat more. And because it was that felty material, it wouldn't just like roll down like it would a raincoat fabric. It would kind of just absorb into it. And then you got to think about, okay, how am I going to wash this? Am I going to get some waterproof solution that you throw into the washing machine with it, and that costs some money too? Or am I just going to smell like absolute shit and have this like start to get gross? And that was where I kind of went downhill with them, because I didn't care enough to find a solution. I think
most people's solution is to throw them out and get a new one, because they're like $20?
Yeah.
So,
and with any hot rain gear, the answer is always mechanical ventilation, not fancier fabrics. Like, none of the breathable fabrics are that breathable, and they're all about to get worse with the whole PFAS situation.
I was literally just about to ask you that. So where do we stand with rain gear with PFAS?
So yeah, a lot of the high performance rain gear previously was long chain PFAS chemicals. So they're all also having to switch to short chain or an alternate technology. Personally, I've been non-breathable rain jacket for about 4 years, and I'm very happy with it. I use the Light Heart Gear Sil Poly rain jacket, and I think they're only $75, so that I would consider that a budget pick. Full-length zipper, full-length pit zip, and they're still only 6 ounces.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I land. I did have to do a custom charge because I'm a baboon, so that cost me some extra money. But yeah, breathable rain gear never really worked, and it's about to work even less.
Yeah, one more thought I have on budget things for rain, and this is another thing I did on the Northville Placid Trail, was I knew when I was getting back on trail after the Bills game that I was going into 2 days of rain. And
is that what you're using?
No, mine's more like a rain jacket.
Oh, okay, because the one I'm seeing on the site is $150.
They have just like a straight jacket. They have changed it since I bought one. It used to be like an unsealed,
maybe that's
non-tapeable fabric.
Because now they are sealed.
Yeah, so now they use tape to seal it. So they changed their fabric a little bit. I don't know if they switched to waterproof zippers. They didn't at the time I used them. Or I still have mine, but yeah, they've changed them a little bit better. Another one in this category that I don't think is budget either is like anti-gravity gear. They make a nice Sil Poly rain jacket that's pretty light.
Sorry to cut you off, Chance.
No, it's okay. So the other thing that I did on the Northville Placid Trail, I knew I was coming back from the Bills game to 2 days of rain, and I knew from the earlier days when we hiked that like the bushes are so overgrown in spots that it just car washes you going through. It's like when you get your car hit from the sides. So I had my poncho, but I was concerned about, are my legs going to get wet too? Something that I did that I've done on other trails too is just tossed a garbage bag into my pack. And so on the day that it was raining a bunch, that my knees started to get a little wet and like my thighs started to get a little wet because the poncho didn't reach them when I tucked it into my pack, was I cut open the bottom of the trash bag, and the part that has the tie strings I put on first so that the tie strings are on my hips. And then you tie the garbage bag tie like you would to close it, but you just tie it so that it's tight around your hips. And now you've got a rain skirt that costs like, pennies.
Yeah, ask a restaurant for one for free.
Well, so that's what I ended up doing on the PCT after I tossed my frog togs, was I was like, it's not like raining often out here. There's not much rain. So I don't really feel like I need to be carrying rain gear at all times. But if I would check the weather and I would see that I might get an afternoon rain or a night of rain, when I was in the town previous that I was checking the weather, I would ask like McDonald's or something if I could have a trash bag. And those places have those big fucking trash bags. Like they're gigantic black ones for their huge trash bins. So they're great. And you can toss one of those in your pack, use it if you need it, don't use it if you don't. Depending on the heaviness of the rain, like if I was using a really long trash bag as a poncho, I would cut a hole in the bottom for my head to go through and 2 holes on the side for my arms to go through. Just like if the rain was not super aggressive. But if it was going to be like downpouring heavily, I'd probably cut a hole for my head to go through, and it would just be a section where maybe I wouldn't use my trekking poles and I would keep my arms inside of it. Like, is that dangerous, safe if you fall? Yeah. No, probably not safe if you fall. But
Jones is still rolling down the mountain.
Yeah, that's somewhere somehow. But I've done that too, and I've stayed so dry. But I've just had to hike more carefully. Like I go at a slower pace to make sure that I'm being cautious. But do not discredit the power of a good trash bag. Those things are as free as they can get if you're asking someone for them, and they are as cheap as they can get if you are taking 3 out from under your kitchen sink and tossing them in, whatever you're using. So
you can also get like a Sil nylon rain skirt on Amazon for like $10. My mom actually uses them for her hiking.
Yeah.
They should make like a bubble wrap lined trash bag. That way when you got your arms inside and you fall, you just
Or they should make trash bags with sleeves.
There you go.
For when you have more trash and it needs a place to go.
Isn't that basically what a poncho is?
A trash bag?
Yeah, with the sleeves. Yeah. And the last thing that we should definitely cover is hiking umbrellas. You get them for like $40, and I know a lot of people that swear by them purely even in like torrential downpours. So if you want something that's very breathable, try not wearing a rain jacket at all.
Mm-hmm.
Also not good in the wind.
True. Yeah.
The other thing I've seen people do, and this is more of like know where you are when you do it, right? Like, do not be on the Colorado Trail going over a pass in rain and think that this is a solution that will work for you. But if you're on the AT in Shenandoah in July and it's a fucking 100 degrees out, this is a time that it would work for you. So first is a scenario where I would definitely not do this. Second is a scenario where I definitely did do this. It just started fucking raining, and it was raining hard. I just took my clothes off. Not all of them. But I was just hiking in my shorts and my bra. And I was like, who cares if I get wet? Because it's just skin. And I'm already sweating, so to put on a rain jacket seems miserable. And if I take all my clothes off and I put them in my pack, in my dry bag, they will not get wet. So I'm just going to hike in my skin, in my fleshy skin, and get wet. And then when I get to camp, I'll put on my dry clothes.
Free shower.
Definitely depends on the weather, because again, you do not want to be doing that somewhere where you're going to put yourself into hypothermia. But
yes. Where should we go next? Go to
just like general clothing.
Yeah.
It's hard to make specific recommendations on clothing, because especially since model years turn over every 3 months, it seems.
Yeah.
But just like a general strategy, like we were talking about Decathlon, they make cheap clothing, but like Costco, my dad actually loves shopping for clothes at Costco. He's like, these $6 sweatpants are the best thing I've ever owned in my life. And I'm like, I'm going to take your word for it. But they sell a lot of cheap outdoor oriented clothing there.
I got just an athletic like short sleeve t-shirt, and I liked it so much that I was trying to figure out what the brand was so I could use it for Trek merchandise, because it was like $8, and I think it's the nicest like gym shirt that I own.
Yeah.
At Costco is a great recommendation. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. And one of my buddies, not a hiker, he actually specifically hates hiking. He will never do it with me, but he does field work professionally, and he gets like bay leaf sun shirts on Amazon. They're also like $10, and they don't smell great, as most of them don't, but at $10 it's like, yeah, it's probably going to last you long enough. It does protect you from the sun.
Yeah.
I have some recs. These are things that are long time use. Like, I've used them for a long time that have worked really well for me, starting with the bottom most close to the skin layer, bra and underwear. I was gifted a bralette and a set of underwear from Branwyn, Branwyn, years ago, because they are merino and they're said to not smell, and like, you know, all these things that they were saying when they sent me a pair to test. I have used them for years, just the one bra and the one pair of underwear on hikes, and I have gone a while without washing that bra, and it has never, to my knowledge, smelled. Like, I haven't noticed a smell on it. It has never felt gross after like multi-days of wear. The bralette that I have is $48. The underwear I have is anywhere from $36-ish to $38, I think, depending on like how much coverage, if it's a hipster or a bikini or whatever. But those ones, they, after hundreds of miles of use, don't have any notable wear on them. They are so comfortable that I wear them day to day as well. Obviously, I wash them more frequently when it's day to day. But those, I think, if you're looking at longevity, it's a great set where you're not going to feel grossed out by it and not like want to keep it for your next hike. Yeah. I will wear those until they disintegrate.
I know women who wear those too. They're all rude. I've wondered though, just being like mostly merino wool, if they're good for people who are a little more boobily. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like they're not, that like elasticity isn't quite the same as something that's synthetic.
When you say boobily, do you mean heavier?
Yeah.
I
specifically in the boob.
Boobily. Okay, I thought you were just describing like fat. Got it. Boobs. I've gone through, like, I fluctuate weight pretty frequently. So I've gone through my boobs being way bigger and way smaller. Well, not way smaller than now. We're probably at small right now. But I've gone through my boobs being way bigger. And they still felt good when they were. And I don't have, like, giant knockers when I'm at a heavier weight. So, like, I can't speak from, like, a G perspective. But I can say that my boobs have grown and shrunk while I've worn it. And I haven't ever had the thought of this no longer works. But granted, you know, go through the archives of Backpacker Radio videos on YouTube, and you'll see what me heavy looks like versus me small.
To the merino conversation, that is an interesting thought, because it gets to the point where some of these synthetic shirts get so stinky that either you just don't care what you smell like, which is very common, but once you get back into the real world setting, that's just something you're going to throw away. And I don't ever experience a shirt being too stinky with merino. That tends to be more of a durability issue, but
yeah, they get holes easier than a lot of the synthetics.
They definitely do. But if you get something that's a blend, it can last a really long time. Like, I've had merino things last an entire through hike and then some. Yeah. Like on the PCT, I had an Ibex mid layer that made it the whole way, and then I wore it for years afterward. So, that's something to factor into, is like, you're not going to have to replace it as much. The synthetic is still going to end up being cheaper, because you can go to like a thrift shop and find this stuff at like dirt cheap. But, if you're trying to reduce the amount of stuff that you're buying, merino is a good consideration, provided it's a blend. You don't want to get merino 100% anything, because the durability is never there.
I also think for like, if you're doing multiple hikes, it's nice to know, like, just like it's nice to know this is what pack I use for through hiking, it's nice to know this is what bra and underwear I use for through hiking. This is what base layer I use for through hiking. Like, it's nice to have your go-to set. What's stressed me out before hikes is, like, I started the PCT in Lululemon shorts, Lululemon leggings, Lululemon top, because I just love, like, their stuff as a consumer of products. But I haven't always wanted to wear the same ones on the next hike, and then figuring out, like, okay, I prefer a tank top that has a little bit of flow, but I like it not being too long, because I like being able to buckle my hip belt below it. Like, all these things that I like causes stress leading up to the hike to try to find a new set. And so I love just knowing this is my thing, I wear for this. And that's where the longevity in some of this becomes so great, is that if I don't have to change it between each hike, I can keep wearing it. And an example of that I gave for this as well, for my base layer, is the Patagonia Capilene base layers. They come in lightweight, midweight, and heavyweight. The tops and the pants are on sale for $60 each right now for the midweight. So you can get the midweight top for $60. You can get the midweight pants for $60 on REI. Reason why I recommend these, maybe you could find things cheaper than $60 for a top and $60 for a pant. But the reason why I recommend these for the base layer is that I bought my Patagonia Capilene base layer in 2016 in preparation for my PCT hike. I have just in the past year replaced the bottoms, because on a hike I sat on like a twig or something when I was sitting on a log, and it pulled and it tore the fabric. And this is after thousands of miles. It was just, I chose a poor place to sit. And just like the way the tear grew over continuing to use it when it wasn't that big of a deal, eventually got to the point where it was like, all right, everyone sees my left butt cheek. So I finally had to replace the bottoms, still using the top. And these are things I bought 9 years ago. And so if you can buy a base layer set for $120 and you get a decade out of use for it, so then you're getting a year for $12.
Yeah, and this is kind of like the Darn Tough socks. Like, this is not a upfront budget option, but I pretty much only wear Fjallraven pants, partly because they make my size, which is not easy to find. But they do free repairs at their physical stores. There's 2 in the Denver metro.
Yeah, Patagonia does too, to your point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Patagonia's you can mail in, and they're a little bit slower, but they do it.
Yeah.
But I've destroyed so many pairs of those pants, and they've either fixed them, or after the CDT, they were like tattered, like both the knees cut, the butt from glissading was just all worn out. And they're just like, this isn't like a free replacement. This is supposed to be free repairs, but we'll give you a pair. So I've bought like 4 or 5 pairs of like hiking weight pants from them, and I've just had them for years and years and years. I think I started wearing them in 2018, and I've been wearing the same 4 pairs of pants.
Yeah. Yeah.
And talking about keeping staples to limit decisions for future hikes, on the AT, I think I started with the Lululemon shorts again, and I think that they got too baggy, or something happened with them where I didn't want to wear them anymore. I can't remember what it was, but we went to Walmart and I found a pair of shorts in the Walmart like section that looked great, and I tried them on. They felt great, And so I bought them, wore them for just under 2,000 miles of the AT for what was left, wore them for the Teton Crest Trail, wore them for the Ozark Highlands Trail. They are finally approaching the point where I might need to replace them. Again, a hole that is in the early stages that might start to get bigger. But at this point in time, and again, I bought these about 300 maybe miles into the AT in 2019, this Walmart $10 pair of shorts is still the shorts that I will wear on upcoming hikes because I do not have a reason to replace them yet.
Yeah. And this goes into like whatever you have at home that you use to exercise in regularly.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be hiking or long distance hiking specific. Yep. It can be literally anything you bring out of your house. I have a pair of underwear that I have from middle school that I still wear hiking regularly. I've had to sew them a little bit, but they still work, and they were not made for hiking. They were just whatever, you know, like athletic underwear.
And I got 2 pairs of Patagonia underwear for the PCT. Then those ones I still wear too. Yeah. So between the Bronwyn, which I prefer because I find them to be more comfortable, I feel like they fit better and I get less saggy butt as I do with the other ones, but they still work great. And I know where they are in my drawer, and I look at them and I say, those are my hiking underwear. And if I can have that decision made in 2017 and be in 2015 now, and it takes that part of the gear checklist off my plate for upcoming hikes, I have less to think, worry, decide, and I also am still benefiting off of what I bought them for way back then.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I want to add to the clothing conversation is for down jackets. I know Uniqlo.
Yeah.
This might be one where you want to search the ethics of it, because I'm not making any accusations. It just seems like $50 for what I've heard to be a decent quality ultralight down jacket seems maybe too good to be true, but that is the cost of Uniqlo's ultralight down jacket. I couldn't actually find the specific weight for it, but it is $50.
Yeah. And the one I had put in the list is Decathlon, which, you know, we talked about Decathlon earlier, right. And that one's like $40.
Yeah.
I have actually gotten a down jacket from Costco for $40 or $50. One of them I think was Eddie Bauer brand, which, you know, they've cheaped out a little bit in recent years, but they're still very serviceable.
Yeah. I don't think you guys did a good job with the clothing. I don't think there's too much that I'd offer other than, like, to your point, Alex, I think just kind of whatever, especially for like the active layer stuff, provided there's no cotton in it.
No cotton.
That's a big one, and I think maybe sometimes we take that stuff for granted, but you do not want anything with cotton in it. But anything that's like a synthetic or a merino wool or something like that is going to serve you well. And again, you can find this at a thrift shop. It can be
very thriftable, especially if you live in an outdoorsy place. But like, you know, fast fashion and clothes, people just turn over stuff all the time for no reason.
Totally. Yep.
I've got a recommendation for stoves, if we want to touch on that quickly.
Yeah.
The stove that I've been using since the AT, and I only have the one that I bought before the AT. I have not had to replace it. This varies with the opinions I've seen online. I've seen other people who have said that they don't last long. I think how you treat your gear is a big factor in how long they last, how you store it, how much it gets beaten up in your pack, where it's located while you're hiking. All those things kind of go into the longevity you'll get out of something, how delicate you are with it. But the stove that I've been using since the start of the AT in 2019 is the BRS 3000T.
$15, right?
I don't know where they make it, but it's 25 grams, so it's the lightest stove you'll find.
Which is less than an ounce.
And it's $17 at what I just saw on Amazon. The things to consider about this stove is because it's so small and because it's so light, you don't want to put too much weight on it or the arms can start to bend a little bit. So I'm not going to put a giant fucking pot on it with a shit ton of water and like try to make like me and my hiking partner's meals in the same pot at the same time with this stove. You know, it is a perfect stove for a one-person show. So I can heat up water, I can make a pasta side in it, I can make enough water to fill a Mountain House bag. It is perfect for that amount of stuff, but it's definitely not the perfect stove to feed multiple people on one boil. So
and no
plays
pocket
in.
rocket style stove is really great for big groups anyways.
No, but the MRS does have like stronger arms. Like it's a lot harder to bend those than the BRS is. So you do have to be more conscious of it with this one. But again, I've gotten thousands of miles out of this stove for $17. That's insane to me. I have seen mixed opinions that it doesn't last as long for other people. I can only imagine that like there's a external factor to what you're cooking, how you're cooking it, how you're storing it, how you're carrying it, that plays into how long it lasts. Because, God, I don't have a complaint about the thing. I love it.
Yeah. At that price point, I wonder if there just are more lemons. Like maybe you just get like one that is
maybe
faulty.
like maybe I got lucky. I'm not usually the person who like super lucks out on something, but if this was my lucky lot in life, I will take it.
Yeah.
And if it's not, and like, you know, other people find that there's breaks after 500 miles, what's another $17 realistically? Like that's still pretty freaking good. And you're gonna be, if you're doing everything budget, you're probably gonna be getting some items that are heavier than you might like, because the budget option might be a little heavier. So to be able to get a lighter option on this one for also a budget, like kind of balances things out.
Yeah, I've read that, like, there was a bad batch where the arms bended when they were heated too much, which, you know, stoves tend to do. But for the most part, people have reviewed them pretty well.
Yeah. I think that is like the prototypical, like, cheap, good, popular hiking option. So I think a lot of people would agree with your assessment there.
Mm-hmm.
The cheaper option than that is you cold soak for life. You buy a Talenti jar for $4 and you get to eat the ice cream, so it's worth it already. And then your meal options are a little bit more limited. You can be a cooker and still cold soak a meal, so it's not like you have more options if you can do either. But if you're really trying to squeeze a budget, there's no stove, there's no metal pot that costs a little bit more, there's no buying gas cans or trying to refill them or whatever. So some budget people are like, I just only cold soak, and it is technically less expensive and it weighs less because a Talenti jar is like 2 ounces. And that's a great point. I hadn't considered the fact that you're not also carrying your pot. Like, if money is the primary concern, then that is one. Speaking of pot, I want to give a shout out to PMag's website. He recommends a Stanco grease pot for $12, and it's 4 ounces. Nice.
I didn't even know this was a thing. So I got that from his website. But
PMags knows his shit too.
He definitely does.
Has he been on the podcast?
He hasn't.
You guys should.
Should we get him?
We've gotten recommendations for him.
Yeah.
People have said that they want him.
Yeah.
We'll look into it.
Yeah.
It sounded like I was being salty there.
Why?
We'll look into it.
Oh, well, he's not local.
Yeah.
Oh, other podcast recommendations. Do you guys know the Jan, or maybe it's Jan, from Noon Attack Gear?
No.
They're Colorado based, or they're moving stores in Leadville or something. He'd also be an interesting guy to have on.
Taking notes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah.
There's obviously more to a pack, but I'm feeling pretty good about where we are. Do you guys want to do any like fast hitting things, or does that feel good? We could talk about sawing your toothbrush in half. I mean, I guess that's way more than price, obviously.
I'll give one honorable mention, which is Leukotape. You can get a fat roll of Leukotape for a decent price on Amazon. I have found that Leukotape, for the most part, will handle most of the on-trail repairs I need to make, whether it be to gear or flesh. It's great for blisters. It is a heck of a lot cheaper than moleskin or blister pads or hot spot, whatever they're called. It stays on longer, so you're not going through it as much as, I got a thing of those little stickers that you put on the blisters that just came off when I'd put my socks on, and a day later it was like, okay, I've got none left, I still have blisters, this didn't help. I've had to patch holes that I've gotten in gear like my tent, or I've gotten little like holes in my sleeping pad or my sleeping bag or my quilt, and I'll slap a piece of Leukotape on it. I've had my trekking poles, the auto locks break and become faulty so that it doesn't stay locked and the trekking pole will collapse, and I've wrapped Leukotape around that, made the fix that it needed to do for the poles to last the rest of the hike. I just think it's versatile enough to be able to do a lot of your on-trail fixes that you wouldn't need to spend a higher price buying, these different, more flashy solutions for.
Yeah, you probably don't need Leukotape and T-tape and DCF tape. You can, if you're going budget, you're probably not using DCF tape anyways. But you could roll that all kind of into one thing as a temporary fix.
Yeah. The thing to know about that, though, is it's super sticky and the outside can also get sticky just because of how sticky it is. So if I'm using it on something like patching a hole in my tent floor or patching a tear in my sleeping bag, I'm probably going to take a little handful of soft dirt and rub it against the top of it before then folding that thing up and putting it in my tent, because rather than having it stick to itself or putting my backpack, my God, words. Because if I just put the Leukotape on it and I fold the item up, the outside of the Leukotape will probably stick to the other surface that it's touching when it's folded. But if I can rub some dirt into the outside of it, it'll usually counter that stickiness so that it's there's less of a chance for it to stick to itself.
Covering the adhesion.
Yeah, I'm burying what I did.
And probably a big one is, we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but this is also a great way to save money, is just using a trash compactor bag. Removes the need for stuff sacks, and the higher end stuff sacks are not cheap, especially if you're getting multiple of them. And that is a good way to keep your stuff dry. And I think you had made a note about, or maybe I read this somewhere, about just going into a restaurant and asking for one.
Yeah, I did that on the CDT.
Yeah.
I also, now that I'm home more, I bought a 20 pack of compactor bags from Ace Hardware, and I've gone through 3 of them in the last 3 years.
Yeah, that's a lifetime supply of keeping your stuff dry. So yeah.
But yeah, if you're gonna ask someone for them, try and find one that's not an elastic trash bag. You know how some trash bags are stretchy? Those tend to the stretchiness catches stuff, and it also makes a thin spot. Whereas the really inelastic compactor bags, those seem to hold up better.
Okay, I've got 3 more honorable mentions. These ones are less gear specific, but more general budgeting specific.
I made a note here that we should save this for a more on-brand podcast.
Never mind. I don't have anything else to add.
Because I do want to do another budget one at large. I don't want to.
Yeah. Let's make people wait.
Yeah. So if you want more budgeting stuff, did you have more you want to hit?
I'll give an honorable shout out to Cascade Mountain Tech trekking poles, 2-pack for $40 at Costco. So that's, you break a pair and then you have another pair for $40. You can also find them online. They're seasonally carried at Costco. Also, if you live near a ski resort, they have dozens, if not hundreds, of lost aluminum fixed length poles. If you can get over that and that they're going to be a little funky, they give them away for free or for $5. It's not a hard thing to get a hold of if you're geographically convenient to something like that.
On the trekking pole subject, I have seen the ultralight trekking poles break more times
Totally, yeah.
while backpacking. So I would encourage people to go with the more heavy-duty trekking poles if they're trying to save money, because I've seen the ultralight ones, the carbon fiber ones, snap quite a bit, and the heavy-duty ones just are bomb-proof. I still have my Lecky poles from the AT, and they're still in good shape. So
even an expensive carbon one, if they're thin-walled, they're still going to break. Not to trash a sponsor, but the Gossamer Gear LT5s, I think Legend, when he was doing the Great Western Loop, he was like, yeah, they're great. I snapped 7 pairs of them in 7,000 miles, but they're great. I'm like, I don't know if that makes them great. That being said, I have a pair.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking for lightweight poles, it's a good option. But for me, trekking poles is an area where I couldn't really care about the weight. It's I want the additional arm workout. So your mileage may vary. Sweet. Feeling good about this.
Yeah. I think we covered the good stuff.
Yeah. If you guys want to go deeper on the subject of saving money on a thru hike, we have an ebook written by Kelly Floro, whose name is mentioned all the time on this podcast, How to Afford a Thru Hike, and you can save $2 on that by using code POOP-IS-FUNNY.
Poop is funny, so that checks out.
Yeah. But
if I'm correct, are there coupons in the back of that for some of the brands mentioned on the show?
There are, yes. Many of the brands that I've mentioned on the show have coupons in it, and we've had people get the book just for the coupons. So,
if you're buying a big 3 item, that book will pay for itself instantaneously with that coupon.
Totally. One of the funnier reviews that we've gotten was somebody's like, "I bought this book just for the coupons, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that the quality of the book is very good." So, like, yeah, there's that. Let's do this sponsor question. This is only for Alex because Chauncey and I had trouble with this when we were put on the spot recently. Mm-hmm. The peak performance question presented by Topo Athletic. Use code TREKWINTER15 at checkout at topoathletic.com. What is your top performance enhancing or backpacking hack?
If I'm not going to just say packing less stuff like ultralight, eating while walking and drinking electrolytes both are huge for being able to go harder. Like you see it in ultra running, you see it in cycling. They're eating while moving, they're not stopping for those breaks, and they're also consuming a lot of electrolytes. And the fueling part is so efficient even though I'm bad at it.
Yeah, that's good. That doubles down on my tip for the recent AT episode. I'm also a big electrolyte advocate and consumer myself. So
yeah, and some of them have calories in them too. I really like Scratch Labs. Sodium citrate, and so sodium chloride is for a lot of people easier to absorb and has 200 calories a serving.
Yeah, so. Tailwind makes a good high calorie electrolyte as well. Yeah, lots of options out there. GPS, where should people go to keep up with you?
Don't. But if you are going to, the Trek is pretty much my only social media-esque thing that you can actually follow.
Yeah, and you did an excellent piece. I won't say recently, I guess semi-recently. The Ultimate Guide to Thru-Hiking Electronics was a deep dive. We get a lot of questions about like how many milliamp hours and all that, and you go deep into every angle of that subject. So
it's one of my best read articles.
Yeah?
Yeah, that and GPS platforms are my 2 biggest read articles by like a very large margin.
Huh. Good to know. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on the panel, and don't go anywhere because we got some segments.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
All right. I was going to do Trek propaganda, but we have a poop story, which is way more important.
Yeah. I really wanted to make sure. I made sure to email in advance to make sure that we got to this poop story. It's pretty good. So on the HRP, me and Karen both got some crazy diarrhea doo-doo. She got it first, and it wasn't quite as eventful. I had to carry out both of our packs for a couple miles, but otherwise fine. About 4 or 5 days later, I got it, and it hit when I was in a supermarket, and I was like, I asked if they had a bathroom in French, and they said no. So I went outside and just couldn't get it to come out. So I'm like, okay, well, we were planning on keeping walking. You know, you're mostly in urban areas, so it's hard to find a place to camp. So we had been planning to stay at a church a couple miles down the road that let people camp, but no bathroom. So I was like, I need a bathroom. I'm not convinced this is going to be bad enough because I didn't know I had the same thing as her. So we found a public park that I saw had a bathroom marker, and we got there, and it's like a Asian style squatty toilet, like no seat. Like I had to full squat, and I get up at like 3 a.m. in the morning when it like actually is ready to burst. First thing I do is throw up all over the walls.
Oh, jeez.
And it's a squat toilet, so now I'm in a full squat and I can't touch anything for support. I'm super dehydrated from throwing up, and I've just woken up from like 5 hours of sleep, so I'm not really ready for exercise. I then have to use this toilet like 5 times over the next 5 hours.
Balancing, not touching the walls.
Can't touch a goddamn thing. And it was so difficult with being that dehydrated and sick that I actually thought I got a trip-ending injury from squatting on this toilet. Like I thought my Achilles snapped, and I was gonna have to call it because I got bad diarrhea doo-doo disease.
Were you able to maintain your balance dehydrated and hit the hole?
I did all right.
Yeah.
It also sucks because when you flush those things, the water covers the entire floor. So after you use it once, it's now slippery too. So you can't touch the walls. The floor is slippery. You're in a full heel down squat because you can't balance on your toes.
Yeah. I feel like all things considered, that could have gone way worse.
Yeah. We ended up staying in the town the next day because I was in pretty sorry shape, as you do when you have diarrhea that much. But I was like, I honestly don't know if I'm ever going to leave this town. I might just have to go home after this. And then I took an Imodium to try and stop it. It naturally passed after that first day anyways. And then we're like passing by some hut. I hadn't pooped in like 2 days, after clearing out my system. And when it hits, it hurts so bad. I'm just like lying on the ground like for hours until it like finally gets something out. It was horrible, but it was also so funny.
Well, we love a good poop story
Yeah.
here on
Yeah.
Backpack Radio.
Thanks
and
for
that as well.
sharing.
Yeah, I know Chance is particularly a big fan.
Nothing gets me going more than some poop.
To the Trek propaganda portion of today's show. This one is some pretty good news, but also a perfect follow-up to a somewhat recent episode where we said this is why covering news on this podcast is challenging. This is the Trump administration partially reverses national park layoff decision, again, by Katie Jackson. Days after enacting mass layoffs that alarmed conservationists and outdoor enthusiasts, the Trump administration has reversed course, reinstating thousands of seasonal positions within the NPS. This decision comes in response to mounting public outcry and widespread protests against the initial cuts, which had threatened the maintenance and accessibility of America's hiking trails and public lands. You can get the full story in the show notes, but again, this came out a day after we recorded the previous roundup of the layoffs, and just a further testament as to why covering these news stories are challenging, because things change very quickly, and we are recording this in February.
We're recording this over a month in advance.
Yeah.
So if this change, and the last episode that we did where we mentioned this and we said it's hard to keep up with the news on this because of the nature of when we record, it's dependent on when both me and Zach are available, but also dependent on when the guest is available and coming through town. So we do often have to record super far in advance to make sure that there's never a scenario where we have to miss a Monday because we just didn't have the stars align, in time. But part of what's difficult is when we recorded that episode and brought that up in the Trek propaganda.
It was literally the next day.
Yeah, but Inside Baseball, that was also literally 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So this is the difference of us sitting here and recording 2 episodes that are going to go out a week to 2 weeks apart from each other.
No, it's more than that.
More?
Yeah, I think that episode was the first week of March.
Yeah, so first week of March to now. If you're listening to this one, you've already heard when that one went out. But the difference in us recording it, even if we were more on top of our recording time so that we could be more news friendly, that was a 2-day difference in recording time. So it's going to be a month difference in your ears. And when that month happens that this is actually in your ears, if that's how much stuff could change in 2 days, what could also be changed now when you're listening to this from February 22nd when we recorded this. You know, it's very hard.
Yeah.
It's not that I just don't think that we are in the right format to cover breaking news.
Definitely challenging with this podcast. I guess just a few takeaways with this is, one, this is a testament as to why voices should be used, because if this was in fact a reaction to the public outcry, then obviously that makes a huge difference, and I'm sure that it is the case. The other thing is, I said this in the previous podcast, but if you want breaking news regarding conservation and trail related news, go to the Trek, because it's not bound by weird recording schedules as the podcast is. We're still going to cover news here on the podcast, but just be mindful of the fact that it is challenging for the reasons that Sean's just outlined. And
if our news is that Topos have taken over as the top pair of shoes on the AT in 2014,
it's more evergreen news.
You got to think about how not time sensitive that is for the upcoming months when someone might be listening, versus if we talk about news that changes by the day. That's just a different category of when you need to hear it for it to be accurate, and that's what makes it tough.
I also have a strong gut feeling that the news that we just read will probably be irrelevant by the time.
That's what I'm saying, is if that's what changed in 2 days, add a month into the mix, and how much more is going to change. But I think
and also national park employees being restored, good, doesn't fix national forest search and rescue crew funding. PCTA had some cuts related to this. I don't know if you guys have covered that yet.
No,
but
haven't.
Not all is good.
Yeah. Well, after this recording and before you're hearing this, Hike the Hill will have happened. So hopefully that moves the needle in the right direction some. But
also, I I almost clapped back at someone on your channel, like on the Trek channel yesterday. James had clapped back at them with some good facts. He's always good at a clap back with facts. So I just liked his comment instead. But it was about like the layoffs for, I think it was the PCTA that he had put into his comment. He had cited that, but it was someone commenting on the layoffs being like, well, trail maintenance is all done by volunteers anyway, so I don't know what the fuck you guys are talking about. And like the people in the comments were like, do you really think that all work on trails is done by volunteers? And like think about the paid positions that go into managing those crews and coordinating them and like bringing in all the organization around it. And if we have through hikers out there that are following these channels that think that all trail work is done by volunteers, like you need more news than what you get off this podcast. You need to do some Googling, you know, like this isn't going to just make you know everything. But that shocked me that there's people that through hike that do think that. And I think maybe go online and search some stuff first.
It is a tricky subject because the 13 organizations that do the trail maintenance for the AT are all the trail work is done by volunteers, but the people that lead those groups are not volunteers. So
right.
There's nuance, but to the point of like volunteers, I think we have to give credit to the people who are volunteering.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like that, and we need more of them, especially young people, to get involved as volunteers for trail maintenance. But yeah, it's definitely not going to be a good thing to cut funding for trail maintenance because we do need that money. That does go to needed solutions. So
yeah. So this will probably all change by the time you hear it.
Yeah.
You know, hopefully the world's still spinning and planes are staying in the sky, but it's day by day.
Okay. Something much more important. Question of the day. Would you rather hike 100 miles while being chased by a slightly too fast tortoise or while wearing a backpack full of jelly?
This is like an obvious answer to me. There's one right answer and one clearly wrong answer.
Can I get some technicality questions in here?
Yeah, let's go.
Sure.
How slightly is this slightly too fast? Because the baseline for a tortoise is like 1 mile an hour.
Yeah.
Well, I hike at a 2 mile an hour pace when I'm taking my time. So
yeah, but you hike for 3 or 4 hours, and you're now a couple hours ahead of this tortoise.
Yeah, but is the turtle taking an hour lunch?
Maybe you need to learn how to eat on the go.
Maybe.
Let's say it's 15% faster. That in my head that means slightly 15% faster. So it's going 1.15 miles per hour. Yeah.
And sometimes uphill, I'm also going 1.15 miles an hour. Depends on the grade, as I now know.
Is this backpack full of jelly? Is it like leaking out of all the pockets and getting everywhere? Or is it like well sealed in there?
I'd say it could be well sealed.
Okay.
So my obvious answer is you take the tortoise.
Yeah.
Why? A, it's a great pacer. People use pacers in things like races. I tend to take a lot of breaks going uphill and will go down. Sometimes if the climb is really steep and long, I'll be going at a mile an hour by the end of the climb when I check like what I averaged. Thank you, asthma and general lack of fitness. And that tortoise on my heel will keep me wanting to go. Just like when you are hopscotching. I got corrected on our meme. It's not hopscotching, it's leapfrogging people on trail. Just like when you're leapfrogging people on trail and you're going up a climb and you think, man, I could really stop and catch my breath here. And you see the person that you just passed like on the switchback below you, and it makes you think like, I can't stop right now. This is going to be terrible. That's what that tortoise would do for me. If I see it approaching as I'm like slowly packing up from lunch, I know that like I gotta get moving, you know, like this is my pacing tortoise. We are working together. Also, what's he gonna do if he catches me?
That was my big question. It wasn't established the consequences.
Yeah, like the tortoise isn't gonna do shit. It's just gonna pass me, and I'm gonna be like, okay.
It's not like the
enjoy your hike.
The question of the day we had where there was like a murderous snail. What was the?
Yeah, murderous snail.
Yeah.
If
it touches you, it die. You die.
Exactly.
Well, the glaringly obvious thing about why there's one right answer and one wrong answer for this question is if you're hiking 100 miles and your backpack is full of jelly, you don't have a tent, you don't have a sleeping bag, you don't have a change of clothes, you don't have food, or you are holding all those things.
You've got jelly.
Yeah, you've got jelly.
Got a shit ton
like,
of jelly.
are you carrying your backpack or your tent and like all your like things that go in your pack in your hands in front of you while you hike? because even if you were to say they are in your backpack and they are just covered in jelly, then the backpack isn't full of jelly. It's full of your shit plus jelly.
Though, I guess maybe if you're carrying, like, in a fanny pack, some, like, gelatin, or not gelatin, collagen, and you combine it with the jelly. I don't know how you make Jell-O, but if you get the jelly firm enough, you could sleep inside of it.
Yeah, but you also have to heat that, and you don't have a stove because
you could use, like, the crotch pot, and
you could.
You could warm it with your own crotch and just keep making different batches of Jell-O in your crotch.
But you're sleeping on the ground without a tent or a sleeping bag, or you're hiking 100 miles before you stop.
You could get creative. Just cover yourself with Jell-O.
Well, you don't have an unlimited supply of jelly. Like, you can't just empty out a backpack full of jelly to cover yourself for a night and expect that it's still gonna...
I'd say a backpack full is enough to create a shelter.
But on the 5th night, is it still?
Well, if you only got to go 100 miles, then, 2 big days, 3 medium days, 4 short days.
Yeah, I think of 100 miles in terms of 20s. Like, whenever I budget time, I budget 20 a day. And if I can do a little over one day, it usually is mitigated by a little under, like on a get-to-town day.
Yeah, but if you're depending on a jelly shelter, maybe pick that up a little bit.
Yeah, but then you're also attracting animals. Like, where are you doing this 100-mile hike where you're going to feel safe sleeping in a tent of jelly? Because bears, in my brain, love jelly.
Yeah, but they hate pine sol, so you can make it a pine sol scented Jell-O igloo, and they'll be repulsed by you.
Yeah, but I also won't be eating it if that's the case. So now I have no food.
I think I'm going to go with Chance for pretty much every reason she said, assuming that this turtle can't do anything more damage-wise than a turtle can normally do. You also have the option that if it catches up to you, you flip it upside down and your problem's solved until you feel like being nice again.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need better consequences to the slightly too fast tortoise, because I guess if it's like a snapping turtle, that's a different conversation.
Was this your question?
No.
Oh.
I'm assuming this is Rachel, but yeah, fun question. But yeah, I think we all take turtle. Triple crown of foods you wish you knew existed sooner.
Okay. I'm going to start because I have one instantly in the top of my head, and I prepared for the triple crown that you sent in the chat as a suggestion because it came right after the question of the day, so I thought you guys were just telling us that.
Got it. Fair.
So I'm really prepared for a future triple crown.
Yep.
But for this one, the one I'm going to start with is taquitos. I had never in my life had taquitos until I started dating Garrett, and then he introduced... Yeah, never had them. And then he introduced me to taquitos.
Like that's a popular item in the frozen food section.
Not in my house. My parents were very healthy food only.
Oh, that's good.
So, yeah, well, good. But then I went through like 30 years not knowing about taquitos. Mm-hmm. And, man, to have those in the freezer and just toss a few in the air fryer and put them on a little plate with salsa, what a great lunch.
Yeah.
Budget friendly.
It is really good.
So I've actually got to buy more because I bought 80 a few months ago, and I ate the last 3 a couple days ago. But taquitos, freaking
How many
rock.
are you eating at a time?
Like 3.
Oh, okay.
I'm actually somewhat suspicious about the taquitos because I don't think I could have eaten the 80, so I don't know where the rest have gone. However, everyone else is claiming innocence, so it must have been me.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with my first pick as poke bowls.
Yeah.
I think I had my first poke bowl in the last 7 years probably, and it's maybe the best meal.
Yeah.
It's healthy, it's delicious, it's not budget.
How confident are you in the food quality when we're 1,000 miles from the ocean?
Sushi grade? Yeah.
I think Denver actually has some pretty good sushi.
Really?
Hot take, but I had sushi last night that was phenomenal.
Yeah. If you put the food pathogen thing aside, I don't think about it, but yeah, poke bowls are the best, and I didn't have one until I was over the age of 30.
Yeah, same. I feel like they just became a thing.
Yeah.
Or I just learned about them,
yeah.
But I think more likely they just became a thing.
Sure.
I'm going to go... My stuff's going to skew bad for you because that's my diet. I'm going to go with the Lara bars, though. That's kind of on the line. They're pretty convenient. They taste good. They got a couple of different flavors that are pretty good. They don't get smushed very easily. And it's the only bar I've ever had that I've never gotten tired of. Started eating them probably 4 years ago, and I still eat them regularly, which is saying something.
Yeah. No, Lar bars are awesome. I have a special warm spot in my heart for them because they were the first sponsor of my company back when it was Appalachian
Really?
Trials.
Oh, nice.
They were the title sponsor of the Badger sponsorship, and that was at a point where like there's also a financial component if they wanted to be. And they threw money at us. But all to that point, their bars are fucking awesome. I still eat them too.
That's how I feel about Thru-Pack, because they gave me my first free piece of gear. And, like, I feel like, granted, I'm in an extreme position of privilege where I can message a company and be like, hey, I, work for this, like, podcast. I do all these hikes. Like, can I test this gear? Like, super rad that people say yes to that. But at the time, as just, like, some girl who went on the PCT and they sent me a free fanny pack, I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And I never forgot how cool that felt.
It is
so
a very validating feeling.
still
for
wear
sure.
them to this day because
Yeah.
I'm just like, thanks.
Yeah. You get two?
Then I got a second one. I'm gonna go with peanut butter M&Ms. Tried peanut
I thought you were
M&Ms.
gonna say peanut butter for a second. I'm like, what cave
Yeah.
are you living in?
No, I've been eating peanut butter by the tub for years and years and
Okay,
years and
good.
years. But I had tried peanut M&Ms. Doesn't do it for me. Peanut butter M&Ms. Those things slap. They're
Yeah.
so good.
I will say better than Reese's Pieces because I think
Yeah.
Reese's Pieces are too sweet. I think it strikes the balance better.
I
Yeah.
agree, better than Reese's Pieces, but not my favorite of the M&Ms.
Yeah.
Sometimes too much peanut butter is too much.
Disagree, but
For my next one, I think this is funny. I'm gonna say hibachi.
Ooh.
I've never had it.
Ever?
Yeah,
You've never had hibachi?
I've never had hibachi in my life.
truck
Shut up.
trip.
Yeah. So I wish I knew about it sooner.
Oh my God, I've got to bring
and
you.
I wish I've had it ever.
I'm bringing you. Oh, the best hibachi I've had in Denver is from a food truck that delivers on DoorDash. It's called Mile High Hibachi. If anyone lives in Denver, get it. It's so good. A, they deliver, so it's great. B, they also do hibachi burritos where they take everything that would be in the hibachi and just roll it into a burrito. That's fire. But because they deliver, we might be out of range, but I will have it delivered to my house and drive it here the next time we have an episode. Just tell me when.
Okay.
You need to try it. It's so, so good. And
Yeah.
it's not the same as an in-person experience. But I will say, now that I know this, mental note, Rachel, please mark this down somewhere. Next Palooza.
Just doing a hibachi.
Team hibachi.
Yeah. Isn't hibachi, they're just cooking it on like an open skillet? I guess I don't know.
In front of you, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just the combination of the way the rice tastes with the vegetables, with the two meats of choice, and just drowning it in as much yum yum sauce as you want, and them making the little like hibachi onion volcano and lighting it on fire and making funny sounds is hilarious. Like having them take the little spatula thing and fling shrimp at you and you have to try to catch it in your mouth is hilarious. Having them take a little squeezy guy that's like a little boy with his pants down and the hole is where his pee-pee is and they have sake in it and they spray this little peeing boy at your face and you have to like catch his sake in your mouth. It is a great time.
Yeah, all right.
So
sold.
if you just want the food, I can bring you Mile High Hibachi. If you want the experience, any excuse.
Yeah. So
Any excuse.
What hibachi grill do you recommend in Denver?
I don't have a go-to.
Okay.
I have ones that are like good enough. If Mile High Hibachi was not a food truck, I would be there every Sunday probably.
Yeah, good.
But we can find one. I
Sure.
can Google.
Yeah. We'll make it a Palooza thing.
Yeah.
It is absurd that I've never been to one.
Yeah, that's insane to me. That's
Yeah.
cuckoo bananas.
Yeah.
Okay, well that really got me roused up. My next one, got 3, so I'm gonna have an honorable mention. I'm gonna go my first one being sushi. I know we just did poke bowls, but I had never tried sushi until after college.
Wow.
Because actually no, until college. I tried it in college, but it was just not something my family ever ordered. Same thing with Thai food. My family just never ordered it, so I didn't really try Thai food until my senior year of college. I was at a friend's house and his parents had ordered Thai food and I thought it was Thai food. And then I studied abroad in Thailand and had my mind fucking blown by how good the food is. But sushi and Thai food were 2 that I had never had until college. Those kind of branched off from the sushi. That wasn't going to be 2. I just thought of that on the spot. So do you want to count Thai food or do you want to give me a pass?
I'll give you a pass.
Yes. Okay, my next one. Pasta sides. I had never had pasta sides until the PCT, when I learned that they were a good option for a cheap, budget-friendly meal because of them being like $1 to $2 a packet. I don't know actually how much they are. I think that's the range.
I'm actually in the same boat. I hadn't had it since backpacking was the introduction.
Which is a joy because I think pasta sides slap. Like, they are so good and they are so cheap. And I will take a pasta side almost as often as I would take a better meal. Like, I could do
pasta side over ramen.
At times, yeah. If I'm hungrier,
you're stranded on an island. You can only have one.
I would do pasta side because ramen isn't as filling to me. And the pasta in the pasta sides actually tastes really good. And if you want to zhuzh it up a bit, you can add powdered milk to your backpack and just carry like a quantity of powdered milk. You can get Nido, Nido is a brand. They sell it at like Walmarts and stuff, so you could resupply with it on trail. And you can also get powdered butter. Those are both things you can order on Amazon, so you could literally order them to like a hostel ahead of you that accepts mail or anything like that. But taking a pasta side, using only water, as long as you're not using the full required amount of liquid, use like 3/4 what they require, it tastes so good. Then using that and adding in powdered milk, oh my God, levels it up. Add in powdered butter, insane. I just think you can't go wrong. If you have if you're leaving town and you have like a bread roll you can bring with you, to put pasta side as the center of 2 buns and eat it like a sandwich is also incredible. Like, there's just so many things that make it such a great thing, and I had never had one before the PCT, and I don't think I'll ever get sick of them.
Were you aware of Knorr prior to backpacking?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I ate a lot of them on the CDT. I think I'm allergic to them now, unfortunately.
You ate yourself into an allergy?
Yeah, I think a lot of them have carrots in them, which I'm most likely allergic to, but hard to say for sure.
Huh.
I could believe that. We had a chef at the camp I worked at who worked there for a season, and his big thing was that it's always cheaper to make food for the masses if you put in carrots, because you can't taste the carrot. So I just remember being really funny because the directors kept catching him putting carrot into like things like the burgers, and they were like, we are a high-end summer camp. We do not need to skimp on food. Like, you can use the full quantity of meat in the burgers.
Yeah.
But
I feel like I'd be able to tell if there's carrot in my burger, but maybe not.
Apparently people don't.
Yeah.
Another great thing about pasta sides, if you get like the fettuccine one and you are on your first day out of town or your second day out of town, you could also pack out some broccoli and like put some fresh food into it and get a broccoli fettuccine.
Sure.
There's just so many ways to make it go from good to great.
I haven't seen you as excited as you were about talking about Knorr pasta sides.
I love them.
My last one. I'm going to go with the Indian dish, saag paneer. I'd always get the chicken tikka masala when I go to Indian restaurants. And then I think I was ordering it on DoorDash. This was a year, maybe 2 tops ago. And I saw that saag paneer was like one of the top recommended things.
One, right?
It's a spinach.
Yeah, so
and like
good.
blocks of cheese.
Yeah.
It's so fucking good. I think they call it like a spinach gravy. Like it's obviously not a healthy dish, even though there's spinach in it. But I haven't stopped ordering it since I've gotten Indian. Since I get obsessive with stuff. When I find something that I like, I can't stop doing it. And
I do that.
Probably the last like 6 or 7 times I've had Indian, it's been saag paneer.
You get the garlic naan with it too, right?
Garlic or the cheese or the garlic cheese.
Yeah, because dipping a garlic naan into a saag paneer is like a day complete.
Yeah. So yeah, saag paneer slaps.
Yeah, you touched on my last one, but chicken masala. Never really eaten Indian food until like 3 years ago, but there's only one good restaurant in my area, and it's called Nepal Restaurant, which is how you know it's going to be good. It's like not any more descript than that or unique, and it's attached to a gas station, but it is very good.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
I will say, some of the best Indian I've ever had for Indian food is in England. The British, and obviously the Indians probably make the best Indian food in India, but if you're not in India getting Indian food from India and you go to the UK for whatever reason, I feel like more people from the US probably go to the UK than to India, go to an Indian place. It's not totally intuitive that would make sense coming from America, but the Indian food in England is next level unworldly.
Yeah. The best like Mediterranean food I've had was also in London.
They've done a really good job of importing other people's foods because theirs is so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Which I appreciate. If you can't do it right, like bring in someone who can.
Yep. Honorable mentions?
Nutella.
That's a great one.
Hadn't had that until after college.
Same.
And I don't know if it's new and it just wasn't around when I was younger. But
yeah, I feel like this has to be a somewhat recent introduction. I think it was more popular in Europe and it came out here. Yeah. This is just me talking out of my ass, but I feel like
no idea.
Every kid should know about Nutella.
Every single one.
Like my kids know about Nutella.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't grow up with Nutella in my life either.
And I feel like it would have met the requirements for my house's like food purchases growing up. Like I feel like that, even though it had chocolate in it, would have made the cut. But I didn't get to taste Nutella until, God, I don't know when it was. I think I lived in Colorado before I first tried Nutella. Yeah. And I moved here in 2016.
It is crack. I'm going to go with poutine.
Poutine's good.
I didn't have poutine until after college, like probably well after college, which is crazy because you'd think like cheese and gravy would go hand in hand with Wisconsin everything. Somehow it escaped me.
Artichokes, I had not tried it. I find artichokes to be quite intimidating. How do you eat them? And it wasn't until they got it as an appetizer at a girls' dinner I was at a few years ago where I mentioned, I don't know how to eat this. I've never had one. And they were like, oh my God, you have to have the heart then. And I was like, now I'm even more confused. And they had to show me how to eat it. And I don't feel confident enough that I would order it on my own without someone to remind me the best way to do it.
It is a process.
Yeah.
Rip the head off, scoop the shit out.
I'm intimidated by artichoke, and it's because of a lack of experience.
Yeah.
Also, asparagus. I hadn't tried until within the last 5 years as well.
Really?
Yep.
I find it hard to cook consistently. It's like, I feel like it comes out different every time I make it. But also my oven's been broken for like 6 months, so.
I've never tried to make it, but I've been around more people who do make it in recent years, which I appreciate.
Sweet. That was good. Mailbag.
I'm hungry.
I am too.
Hi, Zach and Chance. Sorry I can't do a 5-star review online. I'm a Spotify user. I discovered your podcast in early 2023 after I completed hiking the West Highland Way in September 2022. I was deep into post-trail depression, even though until your podcast I didn't know what to call it. I can't remember the guest's name or the episode, but I do remember her describing it as grief, and that really made a lot of sense to me. I had saved and planned for years to be able to do that trail, and finishing it was so emotional. Even for a short hike and trip, going back to my regular life was really hard, and I wasn't prepared for it. Listening to you guys really helped lift my spirits through those dark winter months, and I've been listening ever since. I went all the way back to the beginning because I really didn't want to miss out on backstories and inside jokes, and I'm so glad I did. I was tempted to skip through the COVID year episodes, but I was interested to see how the hiking community powered through those dark times. It was so fun for me to listen to pre-kid Zach talk about kids, knowing he was in a world full of hurt in just a few years. Knowing that he was in for a world of hurt in just a few years. Haha. As a mom of 2 boys, I definitely know how hard those early years are. Mine are teens now, and I'm still hoping to convince them that they like hiking one day. I have never listened to a podcast before this one for more than a couple of episodes. You guys get me through most of my commutes, my Monday 9-to-5 job, and you got me through another hike of the West Highland Way this year, where we continued on to do the Great Glen Way in Scotland as well. I'm looking forward to my next adventures, though I'm not sure I will ever become a real thru hiker, the sleeping in the woods part, not the poop part, guys. You and your guests have given me so many fun ideas for future hikes, and I never get tired of hearing people's stories of the incredible things they've done. I'm 11 years from retirement, and I'm hoping my body will allow me to do a lot more multi-day hikes then. In the meantime, day hikes and shorter trips will get me through. Thank you again for being the only podcast I like listening to. Stacy.
Stacy, that was a very nice letter.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Stacey.
If you guys want to hear your mailbag read on the show, head on over or send us an email at podcast@thetrek.co. To the 5-star reviews, this is from Rolf, our guy, previous guest. Updated 5-star review. I've previously given the show a 5-star review and just wanted to update my review to reflect that it is still a 5-star offering. Your latest episode featuring Snackbox and highlighting his thru hike of the Colorado Trail on his 50th anniversary using 50-year-old gear was really interesting. I also really liked how you talked about ADHD and how it can be successfully managed in work and trail life. Thank you for your honesty on that subject. Rolf, thank you for everything. You've been a great supporter of the show, and we appreciate your updated review as well.
And I will say, Rachel had put this as a note too. Rolf had recommended Jared Snack Box to us a few times. And a lot of the times how some of these great guests get on our radar is through recommendations, because like my brain can only handle so much and I can't always keep a finger on the pulse with everything. But when you combine the brains of everyone and everyone that everyone knows, there are definitely like huge potential for great guests out there that maybe you and I aren't aware of. So all that to say, this is a plug for our Submit a Guest form. You can find it in the show notes. You can find it in the bio on Insta. You can search it on backpackerradio.com. We have it there too. But if you have someone that you would love to be a guest, submit them and tell us why. More detail, the better. But that's probably how we found Snack Box, was through Rolf's reviews. And now you guys all got to benefit from that episode.
100%. And if you guys want your review read on this podcast, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us any number of stars.
Just not 1, 2, 3, or 4.
And screenshot your review. Email us at podcast@thetrek.co, and we will send you a Backpacker Radio sticker. Thank you to today's title sponsor, Topo Athletic. Perfect that they were the sponsor for a budget-focused gear episode, because, like I said, Trek gear testers have cited getting upward of 1,000 miles out of a pair of trail runners, which is seems like science fiction compared to some of the other models out on the market right now. If you use our code TREKWINTER15, you save an additional 15% off of a full-price item. Chance and I have been rocking these since fall of last year and have had nothing but positive experiences. The first time I tried them on, I went for like an 11-mile hike here up over Lookout Mountain. I'm blanking on the name of the trail. But finished it, and my feet felt fresh as anything that I could imagine. Same was true after the Northville Placid Trail. Just been nothing but positive experiences.
Yeah, I think what was big for me was the Northville Placid Trail. I hadn't really done too much training beforehand. We weren't going to be on it for more than a week. So, and my body kind of like remembers like the routine after getting on trail for a while. But usually like the Ozark Highlands Trail, like my feet got destroyed on it, partially because of the water, partially because I wasn't in hiking shape. And so that was something that I was thinking about for the MPT, is like, if we're doing like sub 20 miles a day, I'm going to be fine. But when I got to that last day and it was raining, and I thought, rather than sleeping in a tent and getting soaked tonight, I'd rather just do 31 miles today and get finished. Part of my concern was, doing 30s has usually left my feet feeling pretty crappy. And that's usually not until the later portion of a hike that I'm on. So to go from not having really trained much to trying to do a 31-mile day in an out-of-shape body, like, how is that going to go? And I didn't have any blisters. And, like, it's not like it was different from the Ozark Highlands Trail because it wasn't wet. Like, it was raining. I fell into a stream. My feet were soaked through for the last 10 miles at least. And I didn't have any blisters that night. My feet felt fine the next morning. I was genuinely surprised. I expected to beat my feet up a bit by doing that 31, and I didn't care because I was like, I'll be done tomorrow anyway. But I was surprised by how good I felt the next day. The math wasn't mathing. I should have had some foot problems after pulling a stunt like that.
So use our code TREKWINTER15, again at topoathletic.com for 15% off. Thank you to them. Thank you to our Trek North Award winners on Patreon. That is Alex and Misty with Navigators Crafting, Alex Kindle, Andrew, Austin McDaniel, Brad and Blair from 13 Adventures, Brent Stenberg, Brian Alsop,
Tables,
Christopher Marshburn, Coach from Marion Outdoors, Derek Cook, Eric Casper,
The Friendly Ghost,
Eric Hoffman, Ethan Harwell Dunn, Jillian Daniels, Greg Knight, Greg Martin, Greg McDaniel. It's a lot of Gregs. Griffin, hey, would you bring me a beer? Haley Buckingham,
Dallas,
Mud Tom, Patrick C. Cialo, Rebecca Brave, Sawyer Products, Spam, Timothy Hahn,
Solo,
and Tracy Trigger.
I will say it is a lot of Gregs, but the best April Fool's joke on us would be if, like, leading up to the month of April, everyone
changes
named
their name to Greg.
Or just, like, everyone named Greg, just,
Yeah,
like,
sure.
spent $25 on a funny joke.
Yeah.
And we had to read, like, 800 Greg names.
It's one of those things where you say the same word, like, so many times that it's stops seeming like the right word.
Right.
I get that when I get to the Greg section every single time.
Yeah.
So yeah, if we got past 3, I'd be in a world of hurt.
Yeah, that'd be funny.
Thank you to our guy, Pauly Shawcross. at Old Man Murph's Coffee Roasters, ommcr.com. The tagline, roasted to order, single origin coffee from our place to your face. At Backpacker Radio on Instagram and TikTok, at Backpacker Pod on X, Facebook.com/Backpacker Radio. You can follow Chance.
You can find me on Instagram at Juliana_Chauncey. You can find me on YouTube where I post my hiking videos at Juliana Chauncey. And you can get my book, Hiking from Home, a long-distance hiking guide for family and friends, on Amazon. And I guess I'll also say I'm currently have some openings on pinkblazepro.com if you would like your hiking videos edited and you don't want to do the editing yourself. I've got very budget-friendly options for people that literally just want me to take their videos and splice them together and send back the full file of all of them together. And then I've got more, I guess, in-depth options, like if you want them to be edited to music or you want them to be edited, creatively and then creatively cut down to real length. Like there's, the world's your oyster there for what you can choose. But there is a budget-friendly option if you just literally want someone to compile the clips together into one file and send them back. I don't know if you can find it cheaper than it is there.
Appalachian Trials and Pacific Crest Trials are my books. Would be appreciative of a review on Amazon. Follow us on YouTube.
Yep.
What's up, YouTube?
Hi, Internet.
I skipped over the part to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And that is it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening, and happy hiking.
Bye.